Hello and welcome to the beginning of the Sonic Stop Motion Adventures cast commentaries, where I'll be sitting down with various members of the cast from over the years and talking about the show. Right here we're kicking things off with episode 8, which was the first episode to feature someone else as a voice, and I am joined by him today. Also known as SMB Shippuden 4, Moshe is one of my longtime friends that I met through the show, and he has also provided several voices over the course of the show's 9.5 year run. Moshe, what is up?
Hey, how are you guys doing? It's great to officially introduce myself. And I'm excited to talk about this because this episode that I got to voice in was one of my earliest voice actings, and also it was during my first year on YouTube. So it was really exciting for me.
That's pretty crazy. And speaking of starting, so when I was making the second movie, I held open auditions for a number of characters, one of which being Evil Mega Man, who you auditioned for and landed the role of. And since we're not going to be doing commentary on the movie, is there anything that you want to share in general about the first voice role back then when you were, doing the Mega Man voice?
Just that it was my first time, and I was really nervous, but I was also extremely excited because it was like my first time really engaging.
I think when it came to auditions, I didn't really get many. I think you might have been the only one or one of the only ones to audition, because my channel wasn't huge back then or anything.
Right. But it was still really cool to be a part of it because I never really put myself out there like that over YouTube.
Yeah, and wasn't your audition video, wasn't it the first video you uploaded or something similar to that?
Yeah, it might have been one of the first few that I had up there. So it was definitely during the early days of YouTube for me.
Yeah, I remember that. And speaking of that audition, that is, of course, how we met, and that was over 8 years ago. So that's about how long we've known each other, and that's pretty crazy to think about.
It's amazing, I think, because I'm looking at the episode right now, and the old title cards and the way everything was recorded and how everything is pretty much transformed over the years, and it's crazy to think that it's gone this far.
Yeah, and you're about to show up in the episode itself as Raditz. So is there anything specifically that you want to say about voicing Raditz? And in fact, here you come with your introduction right here.
Out of the voices that I did early in the series, Raditz was probably my least favorite, only because he was more of an established character, and he was always the punching bag of people's series. So I thought it was kind of funny, but kind of it wasn't my most favorite voice at the time.
Yeah, pretty much everything I did back in this era is that's my least favorite.
To be completely honest. I mean, I just thought it was fun because the episode itself was very playful. It wasn't anything too serious, and it was just characters interacting with one another, and I just liked how everything just kind of came together.
The demon got to it with no memory of anything that had happened.
Sounds like a bad fanfic.
But I have come to you to test my power. I have heard stories about you and your friend Sonic.
He looks so funny with that animated mouth. It just looks odd, doesn't it? All the other characters, that kind of sound, it kind of seems okay, but for Raditz, it looks so strange because his mouth is really small.
Yeah, I think it's because they're animals and he's a man.
Yeah, he's like a dude.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I thought it was funny because it was just in the middle of the episode where he starts complaining and he's oh, I'll take your video games or whatever. I was telling Steven earlier that I had never heard of Vector Man before watching this, and I looked it up, and the game is actually super cool, side scroller and shooting and all this other stuff. So it was really dope.
It is a really cool game. I've never played it all the way through, but I'd love to one day.
I think anything else I wanted to add was that Tails was kind of to me, I was just so mad at this episode just watching it because it's Sonic could have beat this guy up, and Tails is nah, fam, I got him. And it's it's Raditz, and then Raditz versus Tails. I'm just if we think about the logistics of this, would this really work out? But it's whatever. I thought it was still funny.
It is really funny, looking at it today. And something I was saying in my own commentaries is this is back when the figures that I had dictated the story, not the other way around. So it would basically be me saying looking around for a villain to use, and it'd be oh, I have a Raditz figure, I guess Raditz is in SSMA now. That was pretty much the extent of it.
Right. But I mean, I think it was just funny to actually, it was really refreshing for me to see like the old Resaurus figures and stuff in stop motion again, because it was like back then that's what a lot of people were doing. They were just uploading videos of them and their Sonic toys and then just making stuff. And then this was just like heartwarming to see again.
Yeah, the Resource figures were pretty common when it came to stop motion for a while, especially with like Sonic Toast and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think the funny part about it too is even when this episode was uploaded, the figures were extremely old. Like they came out in 1999.
Right, yeah.
Still, and people were still finding them, so it was just cool to see them online.
Yeah, because it was, I mean, not so much this episode, but like especially when I first started, Jazzwares was only like just getting started with like its Werehog figure. Like when I first started, the 3-inch line was not a thing. I don't believe it was anyway.
Yeah.
So, do you like how I didn't color Tails' tail right there?
I noticed it, and I'm just like, that's just adding to the charm of the episode for me, because it's just like, we're just on here, we're just making stuff, we don't necessarily know what we're doing, but we're like, whatever, we're still gonna make some stuff, and it was great.
Dude, tell me about it. Alright, well, with just about 1 minute of the episode left, do you have any final thoughts on, voicing specifically Raditz being the first episode that you were a part of, anything like that?
Just that it's really refreshing to look back at it again. I don't really always watch the episodes, and then when I get to see it again, I just remember all these memories of like the Skype calls and introducing myself to you and everybody else, and it was just really heartwarming to see again.
Yeah, it's so wild to think that, the rest of the guys who will also be on these commentaries, like, we all met each other through doing exactly this.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's what's like, our friendship has like evolved over the years, but it's always cool to see that we can go back and see where it all began. And that's what makes this episode special to me.
Wow, Rocket Knight Adventures really does rock.
And so that brings us to episode 9, Let's Cause Some Chaos, which is the last episode of season 1, and quite an interesting one. As I say in my own commentary, like, I started using sets and exclusively using the Jazzwares 3-inch line here, and a lot of stuff like that. It was also the first episode to get this opening that is playing out right now, and Live and Learn, which became the theme of the show. So, when it came to writing this episode, I thought it was like, as a kid, I was like, this is gonna be the best thing I've ever created. And it's kind of like, it's kind of painful to look back at it now, just because like there's so many improvements and things I would do differently, but of course it's like, I don't have the knowledge and scope that I have now, but that leads us to who will on screen soon meet, the character of Dante the Spellcaster, who is quite an anomaly and sticks out quite a bit in this show. Tell us about voicing him and what that must have been like.
I mean, for me, Dante was a lot more fun for me to voice than Raditz, just because he was more of like an original character that I felt like you were kind of just playing around with. Like, before I get into it, I want to like know again like what your thoughts were behind the character himself.
I mean, I wish I could say and answer that completely honestly, because I have truthfully kind of forgotten. I mean, I know I was going for this whole like emerald thing, and as I say in my commentary, like the whole thing with the black emerald, and it was all stuff I had thought of after the fact. Like when I first introduced the black emerald in episode 4, I was not at all thinking like, oh, this is what it's all going to lead to. This was more of a way to kind of explain past things and, most importantly, get the world back to having 7 Chaos Emeralds. But when it comes to the character of Dante, like, first of all, his name, Dante, it's like the edgiest thing I could have picked, I think.
I love his name, first of all.
Do you really? Like, what was your... When I sent you the lines and you, like, were reading this, and of course, back then you were, like, the same age as me, pretty young, like, what was your thought process on seeing what the things that he said and, like, having to say for him?
I mean, I had like a impression in my head of what the character was going to be like, and then I saw the character in the episode, because when you gave me the lines, I didn't know that Dante was going to be one of the Jazzwares robots. So I had a completely different vision of him in my head. So whatever vision I had of him, I kind of tried to match it with whatever voice I came up with at the time. And for me, he was just a more interesting character because not only was he original, but like, I don't know. Even though, to me, it was funny, the banter between him and Sonic. Like, he's like, oh, I'm going to kill you guys, but let me give you guys my origin story. And then Sonic's interrupting him the entire time. And he's like, shut up. Let me tell you my story. So him as a character is just more fun to play with and to watch over.
Yeah, that's very true. Because a lot of this episode is just like literally him like, oh, by the way, I was a spellcaster and I got stuck in the form of a robot, and it's like, what?
But to me, even his origin story was like compelling in a sense because it has nothing to do with the Sonic universe, and I feel like that's what kind of gave me a little bit more of a liking to him.
That part is very true. He sticks out like a sore thumb, like compared to like these other characters. It's like, why did he want to combine the emeralds? And it was like so strange. But at the time, I think, you know, watching episodes 1 through 9, this one definitely sticks out in some more positive ways too, because you could tell I was starting to make attempts at like better storytelling and better narratives in explaining things. And even though now it might seem like it falls flat on its face, I think back then I was doing the best with what I had. It's just really funny seeing it as the robot because, you know, I used this robot figure so much in my show in the early days, and like no one even mentions that it's the same looking robot.
Yeah. I mean, for me, what I like about the stories in SSMA back then was the stories were always very simple. And I noticed as the show progressed, you begin to notice how layered the plot becomes. And it's pretty cool because it's like one of those things where, you know, you're just playing around with ideas, and then after a while, this world starts to build from these weird scenarios that happen in the show. And then explaining the whole origin story with why there's 4 Chaos Emeralds, and then he's like, and Dante's like, oh, it's because they're all in the Black Emerald and ZX Power Drive and all this other stuff. Like, it was really fun to just watch the story come together, in my opinion.
It is quite possible I will have enough power to create my own planet. If you are all dead, you can't stop me.
Wait, I have one more question.
I am growing very impatient with you and your questions. What?
How did we turn into our super forms when there was only 4 emeralds?
I would, I'd have to agree. Obviously, early episodes were extremely simple compared to what I would end up doing. It's, I don't know, like, there's so much of this episode I vividly remember making. And I think when it came to the voice, you know, providing a voice for Dante, I think I turned to you mostly because you had sort of been a lucky streak up until this point. Like, you were great as Evil Mega Man, you were great as Raditz, and like you were the only voice actor that I used more than once after the movie, because like no one else I really used again. But
Right.
You know, with you I had Raditz, and then this guy, and then, you know, a couple episodes later you were also early Vector and stuff like that. So your history with the show goes back further than, well, definitely further than the rest of the guys.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, a side note, I do remember in the ending of this episode when they completely destroy Dante, I remember at one point we were at a Skype call and I recommended you use, like, as Dante was about to get defeated and he had like this death cry or whatever, I had like a Japanese Soul Calibur voice of Necrid from Soul Calibur 2, and I was gonna recommend you use it as his death cry, but I remember we just completely canceled the idea and you were like, nah, I just want to use your voice. But I just remember that and I thought it was funny.
That is hilarious. It kind of rings a bell now that you said that, but I would not have remembered that otherwise.
It's so long ago. It's like Skype days.
I don't even remember like being in Skype calls at this point.
Yeah.
But maybe we were. I can't really remember too vividly. And oh man, that animation of him getting up, I remember, because like animation was just now starting to get a little bit better in the show. And with him, like, because he's a robot and his joints of articulation are pretty smooth when moving. So like there'd be times when he would turn around or get up like he just did, and I'd be like, oh, it looks so good.
I mean, for me, again, it just adds to the charm of the earlier episodes because there's like an innocence about it. Like, yeah, there's these imperfections, but at the same time, it's just the video and we're all just having fun. So that's the part about it that I liked.
That's very true, yeah. it's funny, I don't know if you can tell, but at this point, because when I used to shoot, I would shoot like the entire scene at once. It's not like now when I would have to break it up into several like days, weeks, even months for like some really long scenes in the last 2 episodes. I shot like everything in one like sitting, and it's not hard to tell like how, because like you look at it, it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But the lighting here, it started getting dark, so I remember I turned the light on, so that's why there's now like this yellow kind of hue, when originally in like minutes ago that was not the case. Like it was more well, there was no yellow glow at all, and now we have all the characters going super, which was interesting to say the least.
And like, this isn't even the real power of the Chaos Emeralds. You're
Yeah,
lucky.
yeah, and he's like, oh, this is just the mock super form. Imagine what we can really do.
Yeah, you got lucky this time, punk. Something like that.
It's so funny too, because you know, I separate the show into seasons now. It's like episodes 1 through 9, season 1, episodes 10 through 19, season 2, and all the rest, season 3. But when I first started, like I didn't have a conscious break, like between season 1 and season 2. It was just episode 9 and then episode 10.
Right.
But it is really interesting now to kind of see it, how much sense that break between the 2 episodes makes. Because it really, into episode 10 and especially into episode 11, like the tone of the show really shifts quite a bit, and they stop talking about how like the Black Emerald even happened, and something I'm glad I did, because it would, you know, this whole season 1 is like not canon to the rest of my show, so it would have screwed it up if they were like, hey, remember Dante in like episode 16 or something.
Right. I was always curious about like why you never alluded to some certain jokes like bootleg and a bunch of like the stuff that a lot of like the older fans who have been along since the beginning would remember.
I tried to like tease it here and there. Like, I forget what episode it is, but there's like a wanted poster in the background of Bootleg Sonic. It's just never like mentioned. It's just like a visual gag.
Okay.
And then like there were times when it would be more of a not direct reference per se, but say in like episode 18 when Dash transformed into like Zero, like using his technique of like shapeshifting and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, some people would be like, oh, I remember when Zero was a huge part of the show. And it's funny mentioning Zero, because right here, they're talking about Zero, and Sonic's just like, oh yeah, he left off screen, and like, it's like, what? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. And to me, it was especially funny because he was in the last episode just chilling at Tails' birthday party, and I didn't notice that until I watched the episode over again. I'm like, he was just there. And
Right,
like, oh, he left.
They could have like thrown him a goodbye party or something, but it was really like obviously quickly written and just like, oh yeah, he left, or you know.
Yeah. But I mean, I noticed that the shift from the episode, like from 9 to 10, it was very clear. Like it was less about like the non-canon stuff, and then it became more story driven, and like Eggman plotting on the rest of the team and stuff, and then that's how everything kind of got set in motion.
Even with like Metal Sonic, because up until this point, Metal Sonic was kind of his own villain, like in the SSMA universe, like using the Jazzwares JUVI figure, and then into episode 10, like Robotnik makes this Metal Sonic, and it's the Jazzwares 3-inch Metal Sonic, and it has like no relation to the previous one.
Right.
And there's just like there's little things like that completely change the show like directly after. It's just funny to me that I didn't even think really of that, of like, oh, this is season 2 now. Like, that wasn't even a thing.
Right. It's like season 2 just kind of happened over time, and it definitely worked out as the show kind of went on.
And I forgot to mention when it was happening, but when Dante gets killed back there, and for a couple lines before it, I remember you threw this effect on that made him sound really like, I don't know, demented, I guess. Do you know, what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Because like the whole thing about it pretty much was like, I was going to do the Soul Calibur thing that I was telling you before, but then since you didn't really agree with it, I was like, let me try to emulate the effect in Audacity so that it could sort of sound dramatic when I sent it to you. And I wasn't sure how you felt about that at the time.
I think I was just surprised. I didn't even expect it, but I thought it was cool. Like, I wasn't like, oh, what did he do? Like, I took it with like, and oh, there's your credit played by SMB Shippuden 4.
Yeah.
I was mostly just like, whoa, this is really cool, the thing that he added on. But
Yeah.
with 40 seconds left, do you have anything else you want to add about Dante and voicing him?
Just that Dante was a different character, and I enjoyed voicing him.
Different is a great way to put it.
That's pretty much all I have to say. He was different. But he was a lot of fun.
Moving on to episode 11, I am joined now by SupeSonicBoom, who voiced Espio in both episodes 11 and 12, a stop-motion legend in his own right. He's the creator of Sonic's Chronicles and Sonic Versus, although my personal favorite content of yours has to be Eggman's Thanksgiving Feast and Easter Egg Venture. Thanks so much for joining me in taking a trip down memory lane. Yeah, of course, that is my favorite.
Awesome. Well, it's good to hear. You were one of the few people that really liked that, so I'm glad to hear that a video I made in 24 hours was better than the series that I worked on for like 7 years. That means the world to me. Thank you so much.
I was an advocate of those, man. I was like, please make more.
I really want to. But we are focusing on your series right now.
Yes.
As you can tell by the introduction that just played. Wow, what a series. I'm so amazed by what you accomplished, Steven. It was incredible. And I'm very sad that we saw the last episode.
You're sad? Oh, because it ended.
I'm sad because it ended. But I am very happy to have had a small part back in the early days of the series. And you're going to hear my line right here.
Yeah,
wow,
there you are.
I'm such a good actor. Holy cow.
You are so good. You steal the entire episode, I gotta say.
I don't know about that.
Interesting thing about your channel in general, we both got our start at basically the same time back in 2009.
Yeah.
And at this time, making this episode that we're watching now, I remember obviously very much being a fan of your work, and it was always cool to see the stuff you made. So It was really quite cool to have you join and be a part of it in some way.
Well, thank you. It was really cool retroactively to be part of your series and to say that I have a little place in it. Just a great feeling. But let's see what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, we started really around the same time. I think I uploaded my first video in April of 2009. And you were telling me earlier before we started this commentary, it was like May or something like that.
Yeah, I was double checking
Cool.
the time frame last night because I was like, oh my god, this is basically the same time.
Yeah, got to figure out who's the faker.
Exactly. So back to obviously voicing Espio here. Do you remember at all like recording these lines? Like
I remember a little bit about it. I think this was probably, from what I remember, after Sonic's Chronicles episode 5, which was my series. And for some reason, everybody just loved my Espio voice in that. I think it was the first time he showed up in my series. And I could be remembering this wrong, so correct me if I am wrong. But you were like, "Hey man, I like your voice in Sonic Versus, or sorry, not Sonic Versus. That won't exist for years. Sonic Chronicles episode 5. Can you voice him in my series?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally. I like your stuff too. I'd be happy to do that."
That's probably exactly how it happened. That's a really good
word for
too.
word how it went.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, to be fair, that is kind of what you sounded like back then.
You're not wrong.
Which was a whole 8 octaves higher than, or lower than I sounded at that point. I was basically just a dog whistle at that point. Nobody likes to look back on their old videos and hear themselves. That's the worst part.
I think it is actually. Like, it'd be one thing if everyone else was saying what I wrote, but for me to say it and hearing my Sonic is like, ouch.
I just have to brace myself to physically cringe every time I turn on my first episode. Just I don't know, why did I think that blaring Numa Numa at the max volume was the best idea? I don't know.
I asked myself that last night because as I said, I was kind of refreshing myself with your channel, and I was like, man, this guy off to a great start already.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. So what's
Oh, I hate that part right there.
your experience? I have that in my notes actually. It just has capital what period was period that. Like nothing like that shows up prior, nothing shows up like post. It's
so
just
jarring.
What were you thinking? What
was I thinking? Okay, so at the time I'm making this, I haven't recorded my own commentary for episode 11 yet, so I might be retreading when I record that. However, this is the time when I thought like redrawing little expressions was like on the character's like actual figure, their face, drawing expressions there might have been a good idea. And so it's fine. Like there's a scene a few minutes ago where Sonic has his eye closed or whatever, and it's like okay, but I don't like right there. Yeah, there's Jet's expression, like whatever. But when it comes to Jet's face right there, I really don't know what I was going for. I was trying to make him seem very obnoxious, which he is.
Well,
but
you succeeded. You succeeded on that part.
Okay. Well, that's all that matters.
Okay. Well, I was hoping that you would have like a better explanation, but it seems like you're just as confused as everybody else. That's okay.
I think just the gods have the explanation. I don't think any mortal has the explanation for that right now.
That's amazing. Sonic Stop Motion Adventures goes deep. Wow.
It really does.
So what are your memories of you contacting me and us? You know, this was probably one of the first-ish times that we communicated. Not really, but it's probably the first time that I really remember.
Yeah, because I remember, I think we probably somewhat silently enjoyed each other's work while we worked on our own. You know, because like we didn't have a whole lot of communication while we did so. But I reached out, because I heard your SPO and I was like, damn, it's a good SPO. Only good enough for like 2 episodes though. Ayo.
Hey, wait, 2 episodes?
Yeah,
I thought it was just 1.
Well, no, it's this, and you have like 1 line in episode 12.
Oh shoot!
So
I didn't even know that. That's awesome. Wow. Okay, so oh my gosh, Steven, you
put it on your
changing
resume,
my
dude.
entire
I know.
worldview. Yeah, I need to go update it right now. I'll be right back. Okay, and I was gonna say I didn't really continue after that. Who can say why? Who knows?
I think well, it might have been at the time when you started.
I just freaking hated you, man.
I just disliked you so much. I couldn't bear to have
your
you
SBO,
in my
but
series.
you were just not worth dealing with as a person.
I think because I recast SBO as my friend Chris, who AzFastAzLightning, who stayed SBO for the rest of the series. I think it might have been just an availability.
He did a great job.
I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not.
No. Oh my gosh, no. He did a fantastic job.
Okay. No, he did. I agree.
I would never be sarcastic about something like that. No, he did a fantastic job. Everybody, you got some amazing voice actors.
Oh, thank you on behalf of all of them, because I would have to agree. I think at the time it was like, because if it was at the end of Sonic's Chronicles, you might have been on like some kind of hiatus, or you were just like hard to reach, something like that. We've all been like that at some point.
Yeah, I've been like that specifically.
Yeah, so that might have been the reason, and I just needed reliable, like I needed to be able to send the lines and get them back. let me just call out Posty right here.
Fair enough. It's fair enough. Okay.
But no, I mean,
you're gonna edit this part out, right?
Yeah, where the commentary is actually canceled. We're not doing this. But
right.
With just about 2 minutes left of the episode, is there any final thoughts on just your contribution as SBO and just anything from there in being involved in the show? Period.
Yeah, well, like I said, I love that I was part of the show. It's on my resume of cool things I've done with people. Let's see. Let me check my notes here. I had a question. This doesn't necessarily relate to that, but is the reason Charmy isn't in this? I mean, you had to have had him by this point, right? Didn't Jazzwares come out with the 3-pack? Wasn't that how they were all?
Oh no, he was not made at this point.
Really? So they did Vector and SBO first? Oh, okay. I totally forgot about that.
Oh yeah, and the 3-pack came out way later.
Okay, gotcha. I forgot about that. Well, that explains. No, Steven, it was just fantastic being a part of your series. Thank you for being part of mine in the little tiny cameo that you have. What about you? Do you have anything extra to say?
I mean, I'll probably have my own collection of thoughts in my own commentary on this, but
okay.
No, this is really a lot of characters were introduced in this episode, and it was really cool. And Knuckles being part of the Chaotix was something I kept up until the very end.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Any final thoughts on voicing Espio having like 5 lines in this?
Yeah. I really wish we could go back in time and get all those old YouTube DMs and kind of see how our conversation happened, because I think that would be great to remember. But, oh well.
Yeah, that'd be quite a trip.
Absolutely. Well, how close do you cut these things?
Oh, it's over.
Okay.
Sliding right into episode 12, Tails is finally given the gift of a voice that is not provided by myself. It is my honor to introduce Sonic Song 182's KN, the creator of Ask the Sonic Heroes, multiple plush series, and more on a channel that got its start over 10 years ago. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, absolutely, I'm happy to be here. These are, definitely some old memories. This episode is from all the way back in 2012.
Yeah, formative years, as it were.
Definitely.
Speaking of, over all these years I've been working on my show, my memory of certain aspects of it is kind of spotty in some places. I can't actually remember casting you and, like, getting you down to do the voices of Tails and Amy, but I remember working with you after. Is there anything about, you remember about this era in particular when it comes to doing projects like this?
I don't 100% remember what it was like to get cast in the project. I think what happened was you had reached out to me through YouTube's messenger system when that used to be like functional or existent.
Yeah, when that was a thing.
And you had linked me to some of the newer works, and so I checked it out from there, and the thing that I was very impressed by was you did some hecka work on some sets. Like, from pretty early on, like, you could tell that there was so much, like, love and thought into all of this, because, like, there's just details everywhere, there's jokes all over the place. There's always something, like, on screen in the background to look at, and that was, like, my favorite part, so I was definitely on board.
Oh, well, thank you so much for that. Yeah, a lot of people over the years have pointed those out, the sets themselves, and this is actually the first appearance of the new and improved Tails' lab set, because before it was very small, and I had kind of tweaked it a lot. Speaking of Tails himself, when it comes to your performance overall, is there anything you want to say just about how much you've improved over because I'm sure watching and hearing your Tails like in this is like foreign now compared to what you can do now.
Yep, absolutely. And I was looking at the comment section for this video again, just recently.
Uh-oh.
I'm not so bothered by that or anything. It was an interesting split in the way people were thinking about how the voice came across. Like, one half of the people who watched were like, wow, awesome, Tails' new voice sounds so cute, it's just like Sonic X. And then some people had, like, war flashbacks about, like, Chris Thorndike. so there was, like, a half and half. This is good, and this is not so good. But I do think that the voice that I used for Tails at that point was kind of, it was definitely in between those two things. I think over the years I developed, I guess, multiple kinds of Tails voices, because some people really did want the Sonic X Tails, which unfortunately does sound like Chris Thorndike, I'm sorry. And then some people wanted, like, the newer ones that he had in Colors, for example. So I had sort of a fluctuating Tails voice that was developed over time. So yeah, this is old school KN Tails. And on a super old school sounding mic too, oh my gosh.
It is kind of jarring, right? Like, at least compared, because when I recorded, it's obviously the same mic for every single character, so it sounds the same. And then when it's Tails or Amy, it's like you could tell. Like,
yep,
whoa.
You can tell we did not record from the same studio.
Right, yeah.
In a way, that's just kind of like, that's what audio quality like sounded like in 2012. I didn't have the best audio, but I had like this is all right range to where people didn't really complain about it. But when you listen to it now, it's like, oh man, were you recording on a potato?
That's a very good way of putting it. Like, that's just what audio sounded like in 2012. Like, that's just what everything sounded like back then.
Yep, audio like that and mostly square-shaped video.
Oh,
yeah. Those are the big 2012 signs.
Absolutely. That's interesting to know about your Tails voice, because obviously, much like every single character in English, every Sonic character has sounded like different depending on what year it was. Like, compare the Adventure era to the Sonic X era to the Colors era. Like, dramatically different Tails performances in across all of those.
It does it does create an interesting situation when someone's brought in to then voice one of these characters for a fan project like this, because first you gotta find out which of Tails' many voices the director prefers, and then you gotta do your best, but there's always a lot of, everybody's got their own thoughts on which voice for each character was the best. Sonic team and all the dubbing companies just kept changing their minds a lot, and that made a lot of problems back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, even when it came to, obviously, over the years, I gained using performances by other people in my show, but I retained a lot of the roles, like Sonic and Knuckles, as we can see right here. And when it came to them, I wasn't really going for, like, a specific, like, oh, this is Griffith Sonic, or this is Drummond Sonic, or anything. I was kind of like mixing them, and oh, there you are as Amy, the first appearance of Amy in the show.
I remember people were excited about that. They're like, oh my gosh, finally, Amy's in the show.
Yeah, I think I probably had the figure for a decent time, but, back then I voiced everyone myself, and maybe voicing Amy would have been an interesting route for me to take. I knew I wasn't going to do that. So yeah, and it's funny too, because she's so short of a cameo right there. She's like barely shows up, and then once again, I think at the end, like that's it.
Oh my gosh, it's Sonic! Oh shoot! Oh okay, goodbye. And then that's her appearance.
Yeah, exactly. That really shows my writing prowess back then. Like, oh hey, goodbye.
Oh, well, you know what? It made sense at the time.
I guess so. So, in terms of you and your channel, you go back crazy far on YouTube, like further back than me. Is there anything in regards to how radically different YouTube was then compared to the YouTube of 2018 that you can comment on, or, just share memories or whatever?
Something that tends to stand out, at least as a content creator, is how back in the day on YouTube, like, I started this channel in 2008, and I had a channel before that in 2007. So, like, back then, it was the Wild West of music.
Oh, definitely.
I guess, we were all kind of naive about copyright law, and YouTube didn't really enforce it back then. So, I guess in my uninformed youth, it's just if it was a song or like music from an anime or something that had appeared somewhere on YouTube to where I could download it from somebody, I'm like, well, it's been on YouTube for a couple of years. That probably means whoever owns this music doesn't really care. That's not the case. They just didn't really have the options for like protecting their copyright back in the day. So like, that's one thing that I do remember about making projects back then. It was just like, whatever music was around, you could use just whatever the heck you wanted, just all over the place. And not anymore. Not anymore. That's like the biggest thing we all have to look out for now. Just making sure, we're getting music from sources that actually have given you permission. Or thankfully, like, Sonic Team is pretty gracious about letting people like use music in fan projects. Fortunately, Sonic Stop Motion Adventures used a lot of Sonic music, so I'm guessing you didn't get into too much trouble for old school music choices.
No, I didn't. I mean, I think I go over this in one of my own commentaries, but do you remember that whole fiasco in 2015 with E-License and them claiming so much of the Sonic music library?
Oh man, no, I don't. I went on my hiatus from YouTube and was like completely offline for.
That's right.
Like,
yes.
It was 2014 was about the cutoff where I completely disappeared. I at least still got like an episode out in that year, but I totally missed 2015 and 2016 and almost all of 2017.
Okay, well that makes sense why you would miss it then. It was this company, and there have been a lot of companies like this that kind of incorrectly claim something as theirs on YouTube
Yeah.
because they can exploit the copyright system that way. But they were going around and claiming like so much Sonic music, and I think even some other Sega music too. Thankfully, I remember Aaron Weber addressing it, at least on Twitter or something, and he was like, no, this isn't for real, like, we're getting this handled in. And it was handled, and thankfully they're gone, so we don't have to worry about e-license anymore.
All right, that's good.
I mean, knock on wood, like, you
Yep,
know,
yep.
they could always resurface or something.
Don't resurface. Go away.
Hey, come on, I do not spew catchphrases.
What am I gonna do with all these balls?
Oh my gosh, that line.
Here is the first of the cast commentaries where I am joined by multiple people to have that have contributed to the show over the years, and people that I also have the privilege to call my friends. Continuing from episode 12, I am once again joined by Sonic Song 182's KN, but also my very good and longtime friend AJ, also known as LifelineTheHedgehog here on YouTube. What is up, guys? Thanks for joining me.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for having us.
So, starting with AJ, YouTube is, of course, how we met, similar to pretty much everyone here.
Right.
Part of these commentaries, but more specifically through stop motion. This episode's very significant in the fact that it was your first direct contribution to the show, as you voiced this Gamma here. What's it like to kind of look back on not only this role, but the entire, like, just general time of us meeting and talking for the first time?
Well, as far as this role goes, it's definitely not gonna make me win any awards. This is probably like the worst
Oh,
I've
no,
ever
come
done for your show ever.
Oh no, dude, I loved that guy. You were very charming.
Thanks. But yeah, thanks to this episode, I remember being extremely hyped because you asked me to be a voice in your show. I was like, oh my god, because this was before like I really got to know you as like a friend, and you were still just kind of
Yeah.
like that guy on YouTube that I looked up to. So
Aw.
it was surreal.
I know at this point we had kind of been talking for a little bit, but I was also, on my end, I was also eager to, like, have you take part in something related to the show. And I guess, like, I don't know, Gamma fit because I guess Gamma could be technically voiced by anyone, so it was like, oh, awesome, like, you know, he can finally be a part of it here. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, I think you'll win some kind of award once this commentary comes out for the role of Gamma. I think you're being too hard on yourself.
Yeah, well, maybe the commentary itself will win an award since it's way more professional than the Gamma acting. We do have KN here after all, you know, the pro.
That's true.
Oh man, nah. I maybe had a little bit of, you know, just fan experience back in the day at that point, but man, my microphone's just as wonky sounding as everybody else's. Yeah, we were all on the same journey, we just maybe were at different points when we started, but I thought you sounded adorable.
Well, thanks. I tried my best.
He was able to hide behind the robot filter a little bit too.
Better or something else?
I'm glad you asked. I found out that there's a certain potion that consists of a sensu bean.
Can we do a silver episode now?
Oh, we'll get there. But in terms of KN, so this is the second episode you were a part of, again voicing Tails and Amy. Which role between the two did you prefer back then, and has that at all changed now?
You know, it kind of depends, because I have voiced Tails and Amy in a lot of different projects, and between the two of them, my favorite just tends to be how they're treated in the writing. At this time, Amy wasn't as involved in the story as she was in later episodes of Sonic Stop Motion Adventures. So at this point, definitely out of the two, I would have preferred Tails, because he was in the middle of the action, he was doing everything, and Amy was just starting to get involved.
Yeah, that makes sense. Amy was, I mean, the last one especially, she was just there.
Sonic and Tails just let me die.
She was also maybe a little creepy in this episode.
Oh, really?
Because
Yeah.
it's just, it's because they were, well, the part where Sonic's like, Shadow will literally die if we don't get these supplies. She's like, oh no! So we're going on a date, right?
Yeah. It was definitely before I had stepped into making Amy like my own for the show. I really kind of did that starting in episode 15. which is the one that immediately follows this actually. But yeah, here I was still kind of figuring out what I wanted the character to be like in all aspects.
I think that does happen with a lot of content creators, because we start with what we're basically given in the game, and that's literally how she would act in a lot of the games, like, not all of them, but many of them. So we all start from there, and then start to flesh out the character, because there's a lot of interesting things to do with her. It's just, you gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, and I think she would probably do something like that in the games, like,
yeah.
Hey, this person is gonna die. And she was like, that sucks, can I get a date?
Yep, it was completely in character. She was just as creepy there as she is when written by Sonic Team.
That little zoom, right, when she, like, comes back to the character. Like, this is before I had also, like, timed my show. Yeah, this is before I timed my show differently, so she zooms back to them insanely fast. And I think a couple people pointed that out in the comments, like, whoa, like, slow down.
She was eager. Get off her case.
Yeah.
Sonic, the radar says the emerald is close by.
Oh hey, is that Sonic? I bet you're still a weak fighter, just like...
In terms of taking characters and making them different, like, and back to AJ's role here...
Oh, no.
Yeah, like, Gamma... It wasn't really, like, E102 Gamma. It was just, like, a random robot that happened to be represented by the figure Gamma. Although you're probably credited as Gamma in the credits, obviously. I can't remember if we... like, did a Skype session to record these lines, or if I just sent the script to you.
Yeah, I don't think you started directing me until later, when I, actually became more involved in the show as, like, Silver and Dash and, these reoccurring characters. But here it was you definitely probably just sent me the script, and I was like, I'll try.
That does sound familiar.
I'm pretty sure that was the same case with me. Like, I'd receive the scripts and then perform it. It wasn't until, I think, a lot later that I ever did any live, like, anything with live directing with anybody. This was, like, a little before that tended to be more popular, maybe.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up. Back in this time, later I would move on to directing almost all of my voice actors and friends that, provided voices for the show, but... in the early days, it was definitely like, I either sent the script, or in some cases, I would just send, like, the lines of the character. So, like, you wouldn't even have anything to work off of and react to. If Tails were to react to a line, but that line wasn't there, you'd kind of have to make your best guess as to what to react as. I'm sure you prefer live directing because that, not only do you get the director's vision and feedback right there immediately, but it makes it easier for you for, what to do and what direction to take it.
Absolutely, you just get a lot more details that way, and then also you're doing it right the first time. Nothing like doing a whole bunch of lines and then it just, like, doesn't work, so you gotta redo everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention it's really fun to just, like, do the same thing over and over again and just kind of mess around and have fun with it too. Just because, you allow for that, so I don't know if it would be that way for everybody, but at least recording for you is hilarious because we just do whatever the hell we want, and sometimes it's better than what you intended, and sometimes you get the performance you want out of it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. No, I agree with everything both of you just said. Live directing is definitely the way to go. It's also, as you said, it's also just so much more fun. It's more of like, it's more laid back in a way, instead of just like looking at lines of text and then performing from just the lines of text. And yeah, this is when I was really like, oh, I have Vegas now, so I was kind of going crazy with the effects because it was so foreign.
I love the BAMs.
I had that phase too. Like, oh my gosh, I can do overlays
with
Vegas.
That's a lot of it right there.
Were you on Movie Maker before?
I was. This was the first episode I made in Sony Vegas.
I had exactly the same transition from going to Movie Maker to Vegas, and it was glorious.
It took me a while to learn the right way to do everything, or like quote unquote right way, because there's not necessarily one right way, but like, yeah, I remember even in the trailer, I went kind of crazy with like like using an explosion, and even back then I was like, oh my god, this is like the best thing ever. Because like, you know, in Movie Maker you can't do
even
any
zoom
of that.
properly in Movie Maker. You had to either go to like this corner or that corner. You can't even zoom in the middle. It was awful, but it's all we had, and it was free.
Yeah. Oh, that really takes me back. Yeah, I remember
You
that.
couldn't even layer audio properly in Windows Movie Maker. You got 2 tracks.
I remember having to render like 8 times just to get multiple
Oh
audio
man,
layers.
same.
Oh
gosh, it hurts.
The old days. I was gonna say the good old days, but like no, like
nah.
They weren't good.
Dang. Yeah, I was very excited to finally be free of that, and be, you know, in many ways Vegas gave me so much more freedom, whether it was video editing or audio editing or anything. So I mean, when I started, I kind of had all the tools at my disposal and didn't know how to use them, but eventually I kind of honed skills, and from now up until the very last 2 episodes, you can see improvements here and there.
Poor Shadow crashed his motorcycle.
Yeah.
I need roads.
It's funny because as I was just saying what I was just saying before, there was someone,
look at these
like,
effects,
where I am physically. I know, like, oh, Vegas, I could pan.
Here it goes.
No. But as I was saying that, there was someone outside my window, like, driving very fast. So it sounded like Shadow was zooming past me as I was saying that, and then he crashed. But I don't think the person outside crashed.
That would be
a problem.
unfortunate.
Yeah, it'd be a problem if that happened. I missed both of your credits. They just appeared on the screen, but
Oops.
yeah, this is like the only time I did credits like this, because I think I was actually imitating something you had done, AJ, in one of your episodes.
Really?
Yeah, I can't remember what, but I remember getting the idea from somewhere. But yeah, thanks for joining me on this one, guys.
Well, the stretch.
Yeah, I know. Episode 15, Beauty and the Bot, was the first episode to be released in widescreen and serves as kind of a landmark episode in and of itself. And joining me, once again, is my good friend AJ. What's up, man? I mean, you were just in this video, you were in the last episode 14, but, you know, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? Glad to be here again.
It was around this time, and of course, as time went on after this, that we started talking a lot more, not only you and me, but also, you know, Chris, David, and Moshe, becoming much closer friends. And this kind of extended towards like the quote-unquote unofficial collaboration between our projects. I remember, like, starting, I think, here, I would kind of show you a lot of the scripts I was writing and kind of try to get your opinion, like, should I change this? What do you think I should do? And that was really integral to me, because that was very important. I was able to get feedback from someone who kind of understood, you know, these characters, the series, having a series in the first place, because we both, you know, obviously had series. So that was really cool. Also, your character, LifelineTheHedgehog, he's back there on that wall.
Yeah, really old Sonic.
Really
Sonic
old
school. This is Sonic School one.
Yeah, I know.
Let's forget that ever existed.
But yeah, like having you.
Peakwix there too.
Yeah.
Remember him?
I know, right? Super old school. But having that sort of collaboration or just constructive criticism on the things I made I remember it being very important.
Yeah, I don't know why you trusted me so much in the beginning like that, with that. Just kind of, you know.
I mean, like, when I met you, I definitely got the vibe that you were a story guy and very similar to me. And of course, I became more of one over time. No, you were, absolutely. Because the things that you wanted to do in your series and, you know, of things of that nature, like you understood it at least more so than Chris, David, or Moshe, because they never really did series or anything like that.
Right. I mean, they tried.
Yeah, they tried. I mean, technically, you know, Sans Hedgehogs too. There's 2, but
there's some continuity in there, but like in terms of like a more long running project that has, you know, kind of piggybacks off things that happen in the episodes. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Definitely. But I mean, speaking of your show, we didn't get into it the last time because, well, it didn't really come up, but talk a little bit about your series, Speed Stories, and what came before it, for people that aren't really super familiar with what you've done and maybe only know you as like the voice of Dash or whatever in my series, or don't, or maybe not familiar with either of us really. So talk a little bit about, you know, that stuff.
I appreciate the little platform you're giving me here, but
Absolutely, man. Soapbox,
yeah,
all yours.
Speed Stories is a show where Sonic things happen similarly to SSMA, but it was just really a project that I wanted to do after my first show, quote unquote, that was going to be called Last Life, and I didn't really iron out any of the plot details of that. There was like, I didn't take it all that seriously. The quality was bad, and so are the early episodes of Speed Stories. But at least there, where I kept like kind of forcing myself to keep it going to the point where like everything fell into place and a coherent story started to bud out of it. So yeah, it's a thing. It was a fun thing because when you make something with continuity, you get to have a lot of fun with characters and situations and make callbacks, and it's just a good time.
Yeah, and it was, I think the first one, I can't remember what the first one we did was, but when we used to do the dual releases all the time, those were so much fun.
Oh yeah, I miss those.
Yeah.
Now they'll never happen again.
Exactly, I'm done, man. It's all you. I think, we dual released 19, and it must have been, I think it was 9 for you. And then we also dual released 20, and then for you it was 10, which was the longest, at the time it was the longest hiatus between episodes in my show. And it was the exact same amount of time between both of our episodes, which I found pretty cool.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And so here we have the introduction of the group that would eventually become the Radniks. They're not called the Radniks yet, obviously. They don't even have their names because, you know, they're still under Robotnik's control, so they therefore don't really have identities for them. I mean, they kind of do, but Robotnik didn't give them identities.
Can I just point something out?
Yes, please.
Alright, well, I kind of like how this is reflective of our friendship, really, because in the last episode I was like, you know, Jobber Gamma, right? And then I kind of got promoted to being Dash, who's a recurring character. And then eventually I just, like, became Silver, so it's like, you know what I'm trying to say here? I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's like, I became cooler over time.
Yeah, I was also going to say how you started just voicing robots, like, ironically, or coincidentally. Wow. Like, I don't know why that...
Talk about typecast.
You can't act at all. You are going to play the robots in my show. No,
but
like,
you know, you joke about that, but I really don't think I can act at all. And I think your show really helped me, like, get better at it. I'm not going to say I'm, like, I'm not Tom Cruise or anything now, but, like, it really helped me break out my show, yeah.
I mean, I would definitely say that it did. I mean, compare episode 14, and we'll get to... episode 22 in the next part of these cast commentaries, but compare those two episodes, 14 and 22, where you were Gamma in 14 and then Silver, who was the lead character of 22, and you carried that, and we'll get there when we get there, but you completely, like, definitely broke out of your shell. It also, had to do with getting to know each other more and also giving you actual direction when it came to being Silver. But yeah, it's funny how you were only robots until 19 is when you became Silver, and yeah, this is you voice Dash here, or as he is in the credits in this episode, Egg Fighter number 1, and this was your first introduction as a recurring character. He would become a part of, the mainstay of the group and everything.
Yeah, and I thought that was the coolest thing, that I was, like, on the show now, like, even if it was, like, something like Dash, who is a cool character in his own right, but to me that was like, oh, wow, I'm cool, I can be in a thing, like, I was actually looking forward to being a character that was reoccurring, because I did want to kind of get better at the whole voice acting shtick and all that, and it helped, but it didn't, nothing, like you said, nothing helped more than that entire episode of being Silver and just really getting to let loose there. Like, to this day, I think that's probably the best voice performance I've ever given in, like, anything I've ever recorded for.
It was very dependent on you, and we are getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but yeah, it was very like, if you suck, the episode's gonna suck, so you can't suck, basically. Not to say that you sucked here at all, but you definitely got better as you progressed, for sure. And here we have the introduction of Storm. I can't remember if I talked about it in my own commentary, but Storm was a very short-lived character in my series. He only really showed up here and the next episode, Case Closed with the Chaotix. I don't think he appeared after that at all.
No, but he fits his role as generic bad guy. Like if you needed it to be anybody, at least it's Storm. Like, he kind of fits that mold perfectly in the world of your show, I'd say.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I was totally fine with him being kind of a one-off, not like, well, kind of a two-off, basically.
I don't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
I vividly remember the direction you gave me for that line Dash just said when he just cuts in and he's like, "Will take it from here," but it's a really weird delivery, and you specifically wanted it that way.
Did I really? Oh, wow, I can't remember that.
You were like, make sure he says it like, "Will take it from here," like with the really weird pause in between, and I was like, okay, but it made it like 10 times more hilarious.
Maybe I was trying to go for like, you're emphasizing will, so like, we'll take it from here, but I don't remember the pause. But I wouldn't put it past my old self, because I mean, this came out 2012.
And then his little that he gives Storm when he launches them off.
Yeah. That was very like, that was a you-ism. That was like an AJ-ism at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like one of those things that we found very funny between ourselves. The show as a whole is, from this point on, I think I tried working those little inside jokes in whenever I could because they were really funny. We'll get to see one in episode 18, which is the next one you'll be a part of. And yeah, and so Sonic just got transformed back into regular Sonic, and the Radniks are like, hey, yeah, we're broken out of Eggman's control. And I remember when I was writing it, I knew that the Radniks were going to basically... I wasn't writing this as a one-off. I knew that I was bringing them back. I didn't bring them back the next episode, but I brought them back the one after, and that's when they kind of get their reintroduction.
Yeah.
And they're given their names and their combat specialties.
It's really like the
like
first steps you started taking into like, you know, OC-ifying your world in like the best way you can put that. Like, you know, adding all the elements that made it your show. It kind of started right here with the Radniks.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. And it kind of started with this whole Sonic and Amy dynamic as well. This is the beginning of that, and that was two things right there. The quote-unquote romance, the shipping, and the Radniks stayed up until the very end. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And, I mean, this isn't the last we'll see of Dash, but any comments about this episode in particular? Oh, I wanted to say, before I forget, when they whisper... and they have to like decide what they're gonna do, and it's like giraffe, and you said giraffe. When do you remember doing that?
I do remember that.
Oh, that was fun.
I think because at that point we had meme animal names on Skype or something, and like
you were giraffe. Yeah,
was I giraffe?
I believe you were giraffe. Yeah.
I know you were basking shark. I can't forget that.
I forgot about that.
There's no way I forgot.
Basking
that. It was
shark.
So specific.
Dang, I was a baller back then, man. Basking shark? You kidding me?
Basking shark.
That's funny. And then you were butterscotch for a while too, like a long time.
I think I still am, maybe.
On Skype, yeah.
I mean,
on
no
the
one
dead
uses
platform.
Skype anymore, so
yeah.
We're gonna have to see. But
oh man,
the power of love. Is this where the Back to the Future references came to an end?
Yeah, actually, I feel like specifically written in Back to the Future references, I think this was kind of the end of them. And I was content with that. It is my favorite movie, but I got to I kind of realized, I don't need to reference it every single second of my show.
I forgot there was an after credits scene.
Oh yeah. when I was making the Timeline Paradox special, I got to really play to the Back to the Future references, and I thought it made sense. It wasn't like I don't think it was over. Like, it was a timeline special.
I mean, the DeLorean was central to the plot, so like, how could
Right?
you not?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, and that kind of goes for everything that I used to reference. Like, my referential writing was kind of starting to get phased out from this episode onward.
So you can't control them anymore. After that, I came back and completely destroyed your roboticizer. Hugs and kisses, Sonic.
Episode 16 was really fun because I got to focus primarily on characters other than Sonic in the form of Team Chaotix. And for this episode, I'm joined by my two very good friends, Chris, also known as AzFastAzLightning, and Moshe, once again, also known as SMB Shippuden 4. They both voiced Espio and Vector, respectively. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Of course, glad to be here, Steve.
Thanks for having us.
So starting off with Chris, since this is the first commentary you're a part of, do you have any memories that stick out in particular when it comes to not only the show, but also just YouTube back then and how we met initially? Because you were doing a lot of stop motion at the time as well.
Yeah, I don't really remember my specific timeline, like for my channel, like where I was with my videos, but most likely not making anything. But I feel like this was the first time I voiced something for you in like a major way. So that was really interesting. And I feel
you were
like
also the this little announcement right here. I totally forgot about that. This like red flashing light, and it's like Chaotix team, blah blah blah. That was you.
yeah, I know, and it sounds really bad. But yeah, like when I was watching it before this, some lines are really bad, but I feel like some lines are actually pretty good.
That's a good just review of my whole show as a whole package.
I meant my performance specifically, but I think part of the reason why I was bad was one, because I was like 16, and also like I feel like we weren't good at like context back then. Like I wasn't good at getting the context, and you weren't good at giving me the context of the line.
Yeah.
But also I was just bad.
I mean, I don't know. You sound really great, and it's actually funny to remember how the first appearance of you in my show was in episode 10, the very, very end where you voiced Espio for one line, and then I switched over to using SupeSonicBoom, and then I switched back to you in this episode, and this is where you really got to shine as Espio and kind of fall into the role. And of course, you stayed Espio up until the very end of the show, so that's also pretty cool to think about as well.
Right.
But now Moshe, of course, you had been lending your voice to the show for quite a while now, starting back in the second movie and also episode 8. Here, you voiced Vector, but also you first voiced him back in episode 11. What's it like to look back on your performance overall and just being Vector?
Like, I think going back to what Chris said, the quality of my mic was kind of bad, and like the context was a whole thing. But I think the way we all like improved on that is when we would have calls together, like if it was on Discord or Skype, where we would sit down and you would go over the lines with each of us until we kind of got it the way you wanted it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think without like the lack of context and everything, I feel like my lines and everything came out great. And this is probably one of my more major roles in the show, because beforehand I think I was just voicing bad guys, and then this is like a reoccurring character throughout the show. So that was interesting too.
And it's interesting that you mention, the whole Skype thing, because this episode, I was working on it, and it came out at the time when we really started to talk a lot more as friends and get to know each other a whole lot more. So that it's kind of like a time capsule in that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. It definitely brought me back to like our dynamic in like the square at the time. And I definitely remember it being probably like at the peak, I would say, of like us literally talking like every single night.
Yeah, I remember some calls went so long. There's this one that sticks out in particular that was like 9 hours, which is crazy to think about now. It's like we had so much time back then.
No, we would literally go to bed when the sun was fully risen because we've just been talking the entire night about stuff that probably didn't matter.
Yeah.
Like we'd be on the call from like midnight and stay up all night till like 6:30 in the morning or something.
Right.
That's the greatest part about being on the West Coast when all of you were on the East Coast.
Oh, yeah,
Because I could like still get a decent amount of sleep after the calls.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, you would screw us over because you'd be like, wait, guys, just stay a little more. And it's like, the sun is already up, Steven. I have to go to school.
But it didn't matter because like time zones and all that stuff. So he was cool either way.
Yeah, and I was just swimming. I was like, whatever, man, I can still get a decent sleep. That's 3 hours I still get.
I have the SATs in an hour.
No, stay and talk about Sonic. But speaking back to how, you know, this was first real kind of introduction of SBO being played by you, and how it stayed that way for the rest of the series. This is 6 years old, and your performance as SBO definitely improved. But I always thought it was good, and that's, you know, why I had you in the show at this point. SupeSonicBoom even mentioned in the commentary I did with him, like, you did a fantastic performance all the way through as SBO. And I'm pretty sure he admitted it was better than his. I don't want to put words in his mouth, though. But yeah, it's certainly interesting to see how much you've improved as just this one character.
Right. And I think you did a really great job at distinguishing Knuckles, SBO, and Vector from each other. Like, obviously they had characters in the games, but not a lot, so you had to, like, put a lot there yourself. And I think the voice acting is just better because you were able to make them so separate as characters and all have, like, interesting dynamics and not just be same. Because if you think about it, the Chaotix kind of just feel all the same, but I feel like you made them stick out, and I think that makes our voice acting seem better because of it.
Thank you. That's you know, something I had to play with a lot in the show, is giving character to characters that didn't have a whole lot to begin with, and basically taking their established traits and amplifying them and building on them.
Exactly.
And you were saying before we started this how this episode was kind of similar with to like TV structure.
Right, yeah, so I felt like this was the first episode that literally felt like it had the structure of like a kid's television show, which is awesome. And I feel like when you released this episode at the time, I really congratulated you as well for like giving the audience that feel. It just feels like really well structured. There's not a lot of dead space. There's nothing where I'm like, okay, why is this happening? Or what does this have to do with that? It's all connected and it flows.
Thanks. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I think everything was written pretty well. And I feel like at this stage in the game, since it was all relatively new, like the idea of tackling the series this way, you were still messing around with things. And even for trying it the first time, I feel like everything went together very well. Like from the acting to the dynamics of each character. And like how you kind of kept the flow of the story going throughout each episode. It wasn't just a static thing where they would be caught doing nothing and then all of a sudden they have to get onto this other part of the show. So I think the pacing was also really good during this time.
Thanks, man. You guys are so nice.
Yeah, man.
It's interesting that you mentioned like the kids TV show aspect, because I didn't even really notice it until now when you said that, but this episode is like 12 minutes minus the credits. That's probably 11 minutes, and 10 to 11 minutes is usually like the runtime of a standard episode.
Exactly.
Yeah, so wow, I didn't even really think about it that way.
Can we talk about the slap of A Million Suns?
Oh yeah, I have no idea. I don't know, I guess I was trying to give Jet some kind of interesting thing, but it just came out kind of weird.
His dynamic was slapping people. And then Vector, he had the keyboard.
Yeah, he had the keyboard that just blasted Storm.
Yeah.
My original goal for that, I wanted to have like actual notes, like jump out and like hit Storm. But I got lazy.
Also, this moment with body being ready.
Oh yeah, a good meme reference. This was also before I was using PNGs, so like if you go back to when SBO sort of backflip kicks both of them, I was actually like editing out my hand holding them when I could have just been making PNGs, and it looks, you can tell it's really sloppy. There's a lot of like hard cuts. Yeah, it's like really gross. Still trying to get my feet in that regard.
It honestly, like watching it now, it honestly doesn't detract from it though.
Oh, that's good. And some of them even look kind of nice when there's another move that SBO does where he kind of bounces off the two of them. That looks decent. And right there when Eggman's thrown against the wall, that even looks pretty good too.
How Vector pretty much manhandled him.
Just throws him against the wall.
Yeah, that part.
Two Piplups in that shot. Wow, that's a lot.
Oh, I was also going to make a comment on the set real quick about how there's like a different feel for the set back then compared to the way it is now. But I thoroughly enjoyed just like looking at the Easter eggs throughout each of the sets. Like there was just little things that you had to pick up on.
I forgot I made this part.
Oh, this joke was incredible. When I was watching it before this, I literally cracked up. I like almost cried. It got me.
I completely forgot I made that. This is blowing my mind right now.
Just the voice alone. Cash, R.I.P.
They're still making music.
Also, how many pairs of shoes does Sonic have to just leave them all over Station
I know.
Square?
Well, he's coming back for him right now. That's why he came back. Oh, well, that is episode 16. Any final comments from either of you on your performances here, starting with Moshe?
Good times, man. I enjoyed seeing it, and I'm probably gonna watch it again on my own.
Yeah, like I said, I think there were like definitely some good moments where I surprised myself rewatching this, where I think like, oh yeah, like SBO would say a line like that. But then there are other lines where I was like, I feel like I completely missed the context of what was happening in the scene. Like, the part he says, like, something we have to go now, like, I don't know, he just says it so weird. Like, the emphasis on now is just like...
Yeah, like the infliction of certain lines, because I remember, like, it would be in the middle of a fight, and you're supposed to say it one way, and then I'm saying it in this casual way, and they're supposed to be, like, punching each other, like, oh, don't let your guard down.
Right. Steve got, he became a better voice acting director down the line.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. For episode 17, I once again am joined by Chris, but I'm also joined by David this time. You may also know him as PilotTails, the mastermind behind Mega Man X stop motion, and of course Super Sans vs. Super Hedgehogs. Both of you guys, thanks for joining me for this one.
Hey.
Yeah, no problem. That is me.
So here, Chris picks up the role of Clanker, which he keeps for the rest of the show, and David reprises his role of Jorgen, of Jorgen as he first appeared in episode 15.
Who played Clanker before me?
It was me. Like, I just did like a simple voice before I really knew what I was doing with the Radniks too much.
Yeah, I mean, the Radniks are fun, but I knew my voice acting was just here to fill a gap.
He's fun, though. He's a fun character.
For
but
sure.
David, specifically, so I asked the rest of the guys this, but seeing as how you're the last of the boys to be introduced, what comments do you have when it comes to us, like, meeting in general? Obviously, by this episode, we were pretty well acquainted, but the times before then, you know, are there any memories that stick out from, like, old days of YouTube or Square memories or anything like that?
I mean, YouTube is a different time. Like, you could do so much more with your channels and channel templates, and we had actual comment boards on our channels, and I just remember when you shouted out to each of us and it's like, hey, I'm trying to, you know, get acquainted with each of you and just want to chat and see what's up, and I thought it was going to be a one-off thing, and, you know, now we're just, you know, pretty tight, like, surprisingly, after so many years, and it's been a real pleasure to, you know, be able to work on and critique each other's stuff and continue to be creative.
Speaking of just how long it has been, right before we started this commentary, we, made a little Facebook group of just the three of us to record this commentary, and we stumbled on, like, old, ancient DMs from, like, 6 years ago, and it was like, whoa.
All toy obsessed, super toy obsessed.
Yeah, all about figures and stuff, because we were pretty all into heavy collecting back then, especially me.
And
I don't know.
I believe the conversation turned into how our lives would be while doing the intercourse, while also having toys in the room.
Wow, nice. Chris, I know that whenever we would do like the sessions for Clanker, they were typically a lot of fun because of just the nature of his voice, and he was loud and yelling a lot.
He's just a party guy.
He is a party guy. He's the jock of the group. What was like the role for you in general of Clanker?
I feel like I don't know if we did our DBZ dubs before this, but I feel like it was just Gohan from our dubs.
I can hear that.
And I think that's probably my inspiration as well. Just always being ready to party.
That Gohan is like that in the dubs we've done. You're right.
It gotta be the Jice of the not Ginyu Force.
You can see I didn't want to make the gyro one float, so I just put him on the other Ratnik. I was like, whatever, I don't want to do this. David, similar question though when it came to voicing, Jorgen. It was basically just your normal voice, but what was it like to voice him for you?
Obviously I have a very restrictive voice when it comes to VAing, but I remember just going through a ton of takes and then like doing an extremely whiny one, and then you're just like, yeah, let's go with that. That's your impression on this character.
Jorgen overall is a very... Oh, there's Sans versus Hedgehog right there.
The book was better.
The book was better. Yeah, that's what Sonic says when he sees it. Yeah, Jorgen overall was like very fun because in his introduction in 15, he's like, "We're all just souls swimming in a pot."
Extremely chill, semi-depressed guy.
Yeah, like really introspective.
Pure mirror image of myself at the time. I won't lie.
I want to quickly comment about well, first of all, when they're like, do you guys want to hang out with Amy and Blaze? And then they're like, yeah, well, blah blah. And then Clinker's like, we should go to the zoo.
Was that actually in the script?
I could pull it up and find out for sure. I want to say it's like, maybe it was in the script, but I kind of want to say it was like improvised by you.
Yeah, well, maybe it was in the script, but you might have just used a line where I just riffed.
Yeah, maybe.
Was Knuckles asking for chapstick or riff?
That was in the script. Knuckles came in to ask for chapstick. That was in the script.
Also, how many pairs of shoes does Sonic leave around your world? Jesus Christ.
I thought it looked pretty cool with like, just like, hey, there's a pair of shoes. Like the reason I had a pair of shoes because I had a Sonic figure that broke, and the legs, like I was able to pull them out of the
right, but they're like in
holes,
almost every set of yours.
Yeah, it was more like a little like Easter egg, if anything.
Right.
Well, sorry guys, you're gonna have
big.
Yeah. Oh, but also in that same scene where Clanker says we should go to the zoo, David, as Jorgen, you said, like, you did a couple takes of let's have some fun, which, interestingly enough, I reused from that, like reel of takes that you did, all the way in episode 27, like the end of the show.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, yeah.
Oh.
When Clanker... No, not when Clanker. When Jorgen is going into the house Amy's house like after everyone.
Oh, for the party. Yeah,
and
I
he
knew
says,
it sounded
"Let's have
familiar.
some
And I was
fun."
like, I definitely did not voice that line.
Right, you're like, what is that from? And meanwhile, it's from like however old this episode is, like 5 years ago and some change.
There's such slight differences too. Like you can even notice your Sonic, sounds a little bit more like your
Bad.
voice is a little higher.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's interesting too because I think like this isn't early in terms of my show, but it's earlier. I was like trying more with my Sonic voice. I would be like, "Hey, whoa, it's Sonic."
Yeah,
But,
like that.
I let it slip a lot. It just became a heightened version of my normal speaking voice later on, which I don't know if it was completely intentional, but I think it worked better later on because it wasn't so like, "Ha, I'm Sonic, whoa!" Like, wow.
Right.
But it's better for your inflection, the actual acting part of voice acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. Sonic is definitely the easiest character to voice in my show because it's just me.
Yeah, so this is the boy crazy episode.
Yeah, this one's interesting in a lot of ways, I think.
This is very high school.
Yeah, I feel like
it is a very high school.
Your
That's a good way of
anime
putting it.
influence really shows here.
Oh, they're going at it. This is like the ep where you get people started thinking about shipping.
True.
I mean, technically that started in 15 with Sonic and Amy, but it comes full swing here because Sonic and Amy get referenced. Like, no one, right now in the show, no one knows about Sonic and Amy, but they are about to when Sonic, like, blurts it out.
Also, SBO trying to steal Sonic's girl.
Yeah, I forgot to mention you also voice SBO in this episode. And you're great as always. I don't know how you feel about your
SBO is
performance.
fantastic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed SBO in this episode just because you see like another side of him. Like, wait, SBO likes girls? He
SBO has a personality?
Yeah.
I love the line where they bring SBO up on like through the computer and we hear them. And SBO, you as SBO, you go, "Oh, so like
so it's my turn."
Yeah, so it's my turn, huh? Funny things like that. Where I don't know, did we comment on the fact that you would always start your SBO lines with?
No, we didn't.
To get into yeah, so can we please talk about that?
Right.
For a
So,
moment?
I just have a high voice in general. So whenever I'd have to do SBO, especially back then, I would have to like get into the deepness by going, and just let it go, and then start talking.
It's a good
Every
mental
single
cue.
line.
So Steve just has a compilation of
SBO apologizes a friggin' second time.
He's a kind man. He's like, "I'm deeply sorry, Sonic. I did not try to steal your girl."
Everyone's left, and he's just like, "I'm sorry."
But then in the end, SBO ends up with Amy. Spoilers.
Episode 28.
He's probably just jealous. Yeah, I know. Hey, come on now. You want to keep watching?
All right.
Sonic, come check this out.
What? What is it?
Look, they're in golden ring jewelry.
All right, here, Steven, for me, it gets a little ridiculous. Why are there 2 Chaos Emeralds?
Oh yeah,
in a jewelry
yeah.
store for purchase?
Yeah, for purchase.
And like, just explain.
You think like, well, probably Bedlam is viewing this at this time, and he's like, "Why are they selling them?"
You should have used that.
Like putting a price on them, 5,000 rings. That's like the equivalent of an engagement ring.
Just willy-nilly selling Chaos Emeralds to the highest bidder.
I think in like a Sonic X episode, there was like a Chaos Emerald for sale. It's not the best example comparing to Sonic X, don't get me wrong, but I think that's what I was kind of going for. And of course, at this time, like the emeralds, I did not know what I was going to do with the emeralds and Bedlam and everything. So it was like, oops. So like
Metal Sonic just going for a stroll and just rolls up. Just like, oh, all right.
But you're right, it does make sense in the long run because it's more of a reason for Bedlam to be mad.
I guess he would also be mad at like, it'd be funny if in episode 25, he's like, I'm killing Sonic, Shadow, Eggman, and whoever runs Golden Ring Jewelry, I'm coming for you. You can see this Haruhi building in the background, which I think it was just called Endless Eight.
Sonic the Hedgehog says, wait until marriage. What did he mean by this?
It's really...
That attack comes back later.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. It's funny how, like, Jorgen has 5 lines in this episode, maybe.
It's best that way.
I mean, overall, he is a character of few words, but, you know, when he speaks, he really means it.
Yeah, he has poignant appearances.
I love how that came out, like him like like flinging into the air and knocking everyone down like bowling pins.
Should we go help them? I'd like to, but I think the Radniks have to handle this one on their own.
Oh.
Sonic lazy.
Steve,
I could go help him, but oops.
Sonic's got a shave here. He's got
What are you talking
He's
about?
got that 5 o'clock shadow.
Oh really?
Yeah, you'll see it. It's like
There you are.
the plastic
The
from
star
the
of the show,
figure.
Jorgen.
It's just like
Oh,
Give it a
I
shot
saw you,
then,
yeah.
man. He will give it a shot. That Michael Bay-esque effect.
Dang, you just get
Dude,
wrecked
what is
by
Knuckles
Knuckles.
wearing?
Oh yeah, so it's not Jack. Dash has like the brigade leader armband, but when he transforms into like other characters, it changes color. Like for Knuckles, it was black. For Eggman, right here, it's white.
Gotcha.
Man, when I saw this rewatching this, I was like, Dash could have really done some trickery.
He could have been like Metal Sonic, blow up and just like won the match.
He has the power.
Metal, go off yourself.
Oh, Steven with the big boy effects.
Hey, I'm in Vegas now. I can do stuff like this.
Yeah.
I was talking about how in episode 14, it was the first episode I had with Vegas, and I just was like, I can do everything now. So I just threw like so many effects on. There you are, Clanker.
He just tossed lightning at him? Like, what? When did Metal Sonic have all these powers?
Since now.
So why Zero?
Because cool toy.
It was cool. Yeah, it's a cool toy.
It was cool!
That's like...
It's an homage.
It is kind of an homage because, like, Zero used to be a part of the show. He's not in the canon world, but, like, it's also one of Dash's transformations for some reason. He can do it in 18 as well. I say for some reason as if I'm not the creator of the series.
You know,
but, no,
it's a reference of a reference.
For as many things as I had genuine purposes behind, like, what I did, there were also things that I was like, it's cool. So, like, that's why Zero was there.
I mean, you have to have those to keep it not boring as a creator.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, things are just cool.
Well, I think we're done watching them.
I just want to say, Tails having the connection to their cams is suspicious, but also the Radniks recording at all times is very suspicious.
The live feed.
I don't think it was supposed to be, like, recording at all times. It was more like Tails just... I was distracted by the challenge space. I'm sorry. Tails, like, had just turned them, like, on to, like, introduce the characters and everything, so, like, he had accidentally flicked on the surveillance camera or something. It's not like... Actually, he probably is always recording, because why not? But, like, it's not always linked to Tails' computer like that.
Just gotta have a lot of hard drive space.
Actually, Bedlam probably should have killed Amy, too, because she bought the emeralds and then gave them to Sonic, so, like, yeah. Bedlam should have just killed everyone.
Steven with the ring imagery. That's not a ring with a jewel on top of it.
It's a table.
This episode was trying to move along the relationship at a high speed.
It's so funny how the Radniks are just like, we're innocent. Like, we didn't do anything. Gets everyone else in trouble.
This episode definitely solidified the Radniks as like a series staple.
Are you laughing at the slap, David?
Doesn't Sonic definitely have like a muffled owie?
Oh, he goes,
Yeah.
Oh, but what Chris was saying, yeah, the Radniks get introduced in episode 15, but they're reintroduced and, taken more seriously as an actual story element here in this episode, because they play a very big role in it. And they continue for, like, the rest of the series, which is, I don't know, is cool. I really liked the Radniks a lot because it was something original that was kind of, like, unique to my show.
Right, exactly.
Def think it was good, too, that, Dash didn't kill Metal. It gives that little bit of complexity.
But then he says, he's like, I think I was out of ammo. So really, is it complex? I guess you can decide.
True.
It's one of the major things that I think sets your series apart just from Sonic as a thing in general.
That's a thing.
Words.
But yeah, any final thoughts on either of your roles?
I would say Jorgen's always fun.
Yeah, Clanker's always ready to party. I think that's
true.
I think they'll both have happy lives.
Oh, definitely.
I would say so.
If SSMA had an epilogue, it would just be Jorgen on a beach somewhere.
Sipping pina colada, just like, man, maybe we are not just all souls swimming in the hot sea.
I need to know if Clanker ever finds love.
And here we have episode 18, Gridlocked. I am once again joined by AJ. It's just me and him for this episode. He carries his role of Dash into this episode where he kind of played a main character, and I remember being excited about this because last episode is when I reintroduced the Radniks and kind of said, like, okay, these are considered main characters now. And then came 18, and I could play with them a little bit and basically make Dash be in a scene and be one of the main characters of an episode without it being like, oh, this is Dash. He's this robot character. Like, he was just part of the world now. So I got to kind of incorporate it that way.
Yes.
Good.
I mean, I don't know what to say. It's Dash. He's fun to be sometimes. He masks my terrible acting by being a robot, so it's like I'm good at it.
I'm pretty sure when I was like, you're gonna be this guy, or asked you to be if you wanted to be Dash, you're like, I don't know if I can act. I'm like, well, he is a robot, so like, you can kind of get away with it. I hate this title card. That's one of my
Really?
least.
I think it's really cool that effect you have behind Dark Sonic. It's like all breaking the matrix.
Oh, like okay. I mean, that's like probably my favorite part of it. I hate how the Sonic came out though. Like, I really dislike it. Looks really bad. I mean, you can definitely relate to that because you've been drawing for a long time, and if you looked at your drawings from 2013, I'm sure you would be like, oh my god.
But in that specific thumbnail, like the Dark Sonic is just like the edited like Rukawa art, right?
Oh yeah, it's literally the key art that I just made
so
dark.
That part looks, at least from a graphic design perspective, it looks good, okay? It looks good.
Okay, I'll take it. And then here, topical joke.
Real
topical. The Plucore movie. I remember.
Was around this time, wasn't it?
It was like right after. Well, maybe not right after. This came out in April. I think the Blue Core movie went up in January, so it was a couple months after. But, yeah, that was... I remember being really excited for that Blue Core movie, and they were like, it's going up today, and I remember it, like, getting delayed. It did. Oh, there's your icon back there, your old icon, LifelineTheHedgehog. Look at that. Man. How far we have both come,
Yeah, pretty damn far, I have to say. I like how you gave Amy a little hammer back there that wasn't like the real one, but you still want to give her that representation of having a hammer. Maybe she has a collection.
Yeah, she just collects hammers. That is I remember specifically, that is the Tom, the Looney,
Gangsta's
not Looney,
Paradise?
no,
No, Jerry?
That's Jerry. Tom, from Tom and Jerry,
Came with that
yeah,
mallet.
came with that mallet, so I figured it was fitting. Man,
There I am.
Yeah, there you are, Dash. Oh, there was a lot of like anime-esque effects going on, like the three
No,
lines.
yeah, you could tell it was like I'm still new at Vegas and doing cool stuff because I can.
Yeah, definitely. This one though, more than 17, strangely enough. Like, I don't know why.
Oh, you pulled a me there, a big me.
What did I do?
When you were panning across Dash while he talked, because like that's such a like I know you would never do that now with how strict you are with your animation.
That's true.
Like, just a pan over like 2 whole lines of dialogue. Like, no way.
And just like, no, I'm not gonna animate for this.
Like, I'm
whatever.
super guilty of doing that. I'm not even gonna lie.
I'd have to go back and watch your episodes and really look for it. But yeah, we I mean, it was us, and there were other stop motioners around this time that did that a lot. Because
it's
like
shortcut.
The second you got Vegas, you're like, wait, I can do this? I can pan?
Like, it makes it look like stuff is happening, you know? It's like, they're not just standing there. You give it a nice little pan, it's like...
No, it's absolutely the dynamic. And I'm not knocking pans in general, but if I did a pan now, I would have them also moving. Yeah.
Yeah, just seeing that, it's just like... Oof.
Yeah, I mean, there are times in the last 2 episodes where camera pans and they're moving, but the way to do that is to make the whole motion and then render that motion and then pan on that rendered clip of the motion.
But I kind of like the age of this stop motion, like specifically. It's not like where it was really bad or really good. It's like in that interesting little middle zone that I find really charming because like the camera quality's not quite there yet. The effects aren't quite there yet. The movements are a little jerky, but like it's so like a product of its time kind of thing.
I was gonna say
you can never be like you can never replicate this kind of way of editing a video again.
That's true, because like the lighting is all over the place, and oh man, there's so much wrong with it. But not I mean wrong with it now from my
like it bleeds of effort.
Yeah. In terms of the camera, this is actually the last episode I made before I got the camera I used for the rest of the show, which meant that the camera I was using now did not have manual focus, so you'll have shots where like the subject of the frame oh, here's a pan. Yeah, there it is.
Hold on. No, that's not what I'm laughing at. It's like the line.
The line, yeah, I know. I know what you're gonna say.
Sorry guys, this is PG commentary, but like there were improvisations of that line that I just kind of threw around, and some of them were kind of vulgar. That's all.
Yeah, it was the line we're referencing is if you kill him, and then Robotnik cuts Dash off. So just take the line, if you kill him, I will, and then just fill in the blank. Basically, whatever you want to say is it probably was said when you were riffing. Because whenever I have lines that get cut off, I want them to seem like they're naturally getting cut off. So I will like have either me or the actor say the whole line, and then I'll actually pick a spot to cut it off, so it sounds like they're actually being cut off, not like, what are you, and then like they're only acting to the cut-off line, if you understand if you're picking up what I'm putting down. So I basically, because it's not going to be said in the actual episode, so I was like, just say something. And then I remember exactly what you said and the ending part of that one line I used, but that's okay. We don't need to talk about that here.
Is that one of the bloopers? Did that make it?
I believe. Oh, I can't remember if it did or not.
I don't know.
It's
I
really
feel like I haven't heard
whoa.
it ever, but I remember it.
Yeah, I remember it too. Now I need to go back and check. I'll check out this hex code or whatever this is.
Hacking the mainframe over here.
The what?
the mainframe,
Yeah.
typical hacker speak.
I remember this was the time that I was not great at coming up with episode titles, and you helped me out quite a bit with some. I remember
think,
Beauty and the Bot
I helped with
was
Beauty and the
yours.
Bot, yeah. That was, like, the
Gridlocked
first
was
version.
yours. You came up with Gridlocked.
I
think
was
you.
Holy Matrimony?
I was just thinking about that. I think it
Maybe.
might have been.
I know, Date Fright, yeah, maybe.
Date
like
Fright,
that was
Date Fright, I think was mine. I think that's when I
Okay.
started being able to like.
Yeah.
Felt more confident about naming episodes.
You're like,
yeah.
AJ, stop, get out of here. I'm done with you.
Curtain Call. I don't know if Curtain Call was yours or not. I can't remember.
Sounds cool enough to be mine. I'm gonna take credit for it.
Holy Matrimony. You know what I feel like it was? I feel like Holy Matrimony was like. What should the
I
episode?
feel like the name came before the episode idea.
I mean, no, because the episode. Remember, we
Did
were
you
in a call with
like-
Chris, and then he was like,
Oh,
"What if you made him fall in love with Amy?" And then I was like,
totally
"Oh my god!"
forgot that was something. Like, he did do that.
Yeah, and that's probably not counting like his voice work. That's probably his biggest contribution to my show.
Yeah.
Inadvertently, 'cause he didn't mean to. He was making, I think, a joke when he said that.
That and when it abruptly cuts to his video intro when you say
oh my god,
I'm in
14.
Lightning.
Yeah. References, right? This is kind of when that 18 now. This is kind of when the references were. Well, I say this as Sonic is saying a reference right here. He's referencing "Break out the butter, I'm gonna make toast." It's a line that Dingo Dial says from Crash 3 Warped, Crash Bandicoot Warped, I believe. Yeah, so that's a reference.
I thought Warped isn't 2.
No, 2 is Cortex Strikes Back, I believe. Warped is
Something
3.
like that.
Yeah, Warped is
It's
3.
been a while.
I like this transition when it's like Sonic versus Metal Sonic, and then it transitions to like Dash as Sonic versus Metal Sonic.
Kino.
And then
Ooh, I remember that effect. I used that one.
the blast.
The little, yeah, like exactly how it was. With
Yeah.
no, like,
Oh, yeah, that's right. I didn't even change it right there. Yeah, that effect.
was
I
a
was
neat effect.
Really like when he cuts the thing in half. I was like, "Whoa, I did it!"
Technology.
And here, you are 0 now, and this is a line I very much regret putting in my series. When you say "repent, mother effer," and it's not censored.
I remember it being
I
a
was
line
off
that-
my rocker, dude. What was I thinking? Just like
I was
keep.
just like,
And you were probably pretty sure you were like, dude, are you sure?
yeah, it was kind of extreme. But you're like, no, dude, it's okay. It's a reference to Panty and Stocking. It's okay. And I was like, all right. And I remember having to do like a million takes of it, like super loud. And like,
yeah.
felt really weird.
Oh, I bet. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I said in my own commentary the only reason it wasn't censored is because it was a reference to something. But like, yikes! Like,
big yikes.
I remember, because my family would periodically want to see the latest episode. I remember showing like
clown honk noise.
my grandparents seeing this episode, and then when the line says "repent, mother effer," they're like, "Ooh."
They're like, Steven, I'm not sure I approve of this kind of language in your Sonic show, young man.
It was really weird. I mean, let's talk about that for a second. So, like, this was around the period where I was like, oh, I hate that mouth that I have on it looks so weird. I stopped using that. It's so, like, his lips are bent.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was, like, really... I mean, okay, so this came out 2013, so I was...
Wow, where has the time gone?
I was 15, maybe? So, I was... really just like I can just make them swear. I'm a teenager and I can just do that. I have that power.
Cool.
And it did not age well at all.
He looks like he's about to just throw Sonic on the
He's about to suplex him, dude. But yeah, like I just had him say, like even next episode, I have Sonic say, "Oh, well, F you too." It's censored and it's played as a joke, but like still,
Yeah.
It's weird. Sonic wouldn't say that, and I came to my senses. I think in episode 20, well, actually, no, he says,
He
He
light
wouldn't
swear.
say a bad language word.
Yeah, in season 3, that's when I was like, okay, I'm over this. Really, the only characters that would swear going forward were Knuckles and Shadow, and they were like the kind of swears that were present in Shadow the Hedgehog.
But like when
damn
Shadow does it,
hell.
it's like he kind of gets that pass.
Right, yeah, but it's not like Sonic would be like, hey, F you, man. Like, that's just not something
But
he would do.
in Shadow the Hedgehog, did Sonic ever drop a? He had to have.
He
Right?
said, damn. I know
Okay.
he said, and it was funny, like, Jason Griffin, like, damn, the black creatures are getting us. And it was
The
just
black
like,
creature. Oh my god, what a game!
I know. Oh man, look at what Tails is looking at. It's just Tails' laptop. I don't know why I didn't just turn the table so the audience would see like the other side of the laptop. I would have made it so much better. But whatever. I don't know. A little Groudon back there though.
He's watching things unfold. He's very invested.
Ever since you said that, like this episode being just a capsule of it's so in the middle. It's not good.
That's what
and
makes
it's not
it great.
bad.
And this was like your first big one too, that really garnered a lot of attention.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming up, but like the Dark Sonic aspect, of course, it was the thumbnail, so that was very like, I wouldn't say clickbaity because it's something that does happen, and it's like I feel like it's warranted to show that in the thumbnail, but it's definitely something that contributed to it having almost 5.5 million views at the time we're recording this. Which, it was so cool. I think this was the first one to hit 1 million.
Alright, so Dark Sonic, the real piece de resistance, right? That's how they say it?
Of this episode, I would say it is. Yeah, it's definitely like it's the eye catcher.
You know, he only exists for like a frame in this, right? But New
Yeah.
Steven would have made him have some crazy, over-the-top, 50-frame, complete 5 years in Photoshop, just frame by frame PNG.
It was very much like a here he is for one. I mean there were 3 frames I edited of Dark Sonic. There's the one where he's like kind of switching between normal and Dark Sonic, and then when it's panning up showing him like, oh, it's Dark Sonic, and then the one where he's glitching the program out. And your title card is back there on the wall. That was episode it's Into the Inferno. Which one was that?
I want to say that one was either 7 or 8.
Yeah, that sounds about
probably
right.
7.
Well, it might have been 8 actually, because the next one we dual released, it was 19 and 9.
What?
So maybe it was 8. I can't remember.
No,
Hey,
because
you would know your own show.
I know, I do know my own show, because I feel like 7 was Into the Inferno, 8 was Extremes Meet, 9 was Umbra Origins, or whatever that episode's actually called, and then 10
Don't
is
know.
the latest one. So yeah, it had to be 7.
Okay. Yeah. That was well, it was really cool having like, you know, my show and then you also having a show, because I could reference little things like that in the background.
Yeah.
Like, oh, his title card. There it is.
Oh, remember the story behind this? I'm sure you got into it in your own commentary, right?
Yeah. Well, it was very much inspired by the Haruhi scene when Kyon talking to himself. I thought that scene was the coolest. I still think it's such a cool scene. Probably the highlight of the Haruhi film for me.
Highlight of life. Like it teaches a valuable life lesson.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's so cool. And I kind of wanted to. It kind of goes back to what you were saying. Like this was like my heaviest hitter at the time. I do so much in this episode, and it was very like. I mean, last episode was so anime high school, as Chris and myself put it, with like the boys, like, oh, who do they like? Whoa. And then in this episode, like Sonic almost literally dies.
He cried.
And then he cried. Yeah, like that's
the
the only time I did that. Yeah, you can't make Sonic cry. Sega will sue me now. They're going to see this.
That's the thing they're getting you for.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you made him cry. So sorry. Cease and desist. And then Dark Sonic emerges from the ashes, and I got into it in my own commentary, but right at the end here, this was the last scene I shot for the episode. My camera was dying, so I had to briefly switch over to my dad's digital camera, which didn't shoot in the same aspect ratio. So I had to shoot knowing that knowing I was going to crop it.
Yep, that's me and my camera that doesn't shoot 16:9. So every episode I've filmed on my DSLR, I've had to put a mask on the layer. I mean, not a mask, but a keyframe on the layer and crop it from the very beginning.
Oh, I just realized you put a keyframe, you don't crop it.
No,
That's
I
what
just put one keyframe, zoom it in, and that's it.
That's actually bad, because if you use a keyframe, you're blowing the image up, rather than when you crop, you're actually zooming in on the image itself. So going forward...
Yeah, but I'm not going to do that for thousands of pictures.
I mean, I don't know, you might want to.
Like, I'd rather just buy a new camera with 16:9.
At that
that's
point,
ridiculous.
yeah. And then this was the big hitter of this whole sequence, when it's just one frame and it's shaking, but everything I did there, I was very... it was really the start of my, like, the level of sound editing I got to in my show, when I really threw a bunch of, like, glitching sounds together. I threw a lot of, like, chopped up bits of Sonic's lines together in that. And I remember, of course, I've talked about how when we would both finish episodes, we would have their premieres with the boys. We would all have a call where we watch it for the first time. And I remember when we watched this episode, after that sequence, because it's silent for a couple seconds, when it was all silent, like, my heart was beating so fast, because for some reason I was, like, so anxious but excited for you guys to see that scene.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my god, it's like people are seeing it now, and it was quiet and no one was talking, obviously, because we were all watching it. I wanted to comment when it looked like Stash was going to throw Sonic. And again, I'm retreading something that I said in my own commentary, but when he came into Tails' lab, he just, like, appeared in the doorway. The doors, like, didn't actually open for Dash back there. He was just like, here I am.
Yeah, it's a video game thing.
He just clips into reality. Yeah, stuff like that looks so bad.
Like in Pokemon, they still don't have the technology to have people open doors. They just appear through closed doors.
Oh, do you remember this line? That's our Sonic! That line was so much fun to record. And then this whole same mind dude, something that gets quoted in the comments, like, I don't know, daily almost. People really loved this ending scene for some reason.
We're the same mind.
I think, yeah, I'm getting to, like, the meaning of it. I think initially some people might have seen it as, like, a regular show reference.
Yeah, just because the way you said, whoa.
Yeah, like, whoa! Like, they did that a lot in regular show. The same mind... I actually do that same joke with the... whoa! Like, the end of 21, when it's the chair. Yeah. But that whole same mind thing, like, we... through getting to know each other and talking more, there were so many times we, like, had the same thing to say to something, or the same rebuttal, or the same joke to make. So we had this same mind joke that we would have a lot, because it happened all the freaking time. Like, we would always have the same thing to say, and we got a kick out of
brilliant.
Because we're great minds think alike. So I was like, I also had no idea how to end this episode, so I was like, they're the
Took
same
one out of the JonTron playbook.
Yeah, that's a very JonTron thing to, like, end with, like, shouting like that,
or like some up-theme thing.
Yeah. Does this have a post credits? Yeah, it must, because there's still, like, a half a minute left. This is because this is the setup for Zalvandor. You could even see his hand on the table back there. Because I knew I think this is still when I was like, oh, I'm doing it's gonna be this knight character, but I had no idea what I was. Oh, did you see how a Robotnik just appeared over there? Like, he was on the other. Oh my goodness gracious, that's something I would never do right now. Ew.
The time-space laws don't apply.
I did that a lot back then. I think 19 is
it's
when...
for shot convenience. I know I've done it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Episode 19 was one of the longest episodes I ever produced, and it was very important in that it introduced one of my personal favorite characters in the series, Zalvindor Benedict Caliber. But of course, a truly great character requires a truly great voice to back it up. It is my pleasure to introduce my good friend, who you all may know as Gilnov, creator of Sonic vs. Stupid Sonic and other various stop motions both relating to Sonic and original works. Jeff, welcome to the creator commentary, or the cast commentary, excuse me, of episode 19.
Pleasure to be here with you, Steven. This episode was the first one that I really worked on with Steven. I think this is the first one that I ever voice acted.
It is, indeed, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I did the voice of Zalvindor for this one. I remember sending him like a demo reel kind of video. I tried a few different types of, medieval kind of British sounding voices. And, I mean, the accent's a little bit corny, but I think that's kind of the charm of it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, he's definitely he's a ham, through and through. And that was, he was written as that. To speak more to the demo reel thing, I remember, and I believe this is back when YouTube actually had a PM system. That is a running trend in these commentaries, talking about that exact feature. I think I had sent you, I had basically said what I was aiming for with the character, and kind of asked if you were interested or not, because we were both familiar with each other's work at the time, and and then I kind of basically explained exactly what you said, kind of like medieval British, etc., and then you put together a demo, and then from there I was like, okay, this sounds good. And then I remember when we finally got on Skype to work it out and actually record the episode, that's when it really came together, and that's when I was like, okay, yeah, this is definitely the right voice.
And I had done, kind of hammy medieval voices like this before. I did a stop-motion claymation video around this time period. Let's see, the video was 2013. Yeah, just a couple of years before I had done a video called Swift Justice. I just recently put that on my channel.
Yes,
and, that involves a knight and his squire going on a magical adventure to slay a dragon. Not to self-promote or anything. But,
oh no, absolutely! That's the one with the clutch cargo mouths, right?
Yeah, it's got the clutch cargo mouths. But I've always liked doing silly voices like that, and but Zalvindor was a lot of fun to do. I think it was a good way to start, voice acting in this series. I enjoyed the over the top hamminess of him, and the learning the dialect was kind of fun. But yeah, he's just a great character. It's a lot of fun to perform, and I had a really good time with it.
Yeah. Definitely a great introduction to the series, because, your Vector is also really, really great, but I think between the two, it's definitely Zalvindor seems to be the most fun. Also, I don't think Zalvindor kills your throat as much as Vector does.
Oh yeah, we'll get to Vector later, but he's quite a workout, we'll say that.
Definitely. I remember, well, I'll save it for when we get to Vector, but in terms of Zalvindor, also you were the only one that I had in mind when kind of scouting the role, seeing who would play him.
Really?
So yeah, you were the only one that came to mind. And when I got the demo reel, and especially when we worked everything out in recording the actual episode, that's when it became really evident that not only were you the first choice, but you were the correct choice, and you handled Zalvindor very, very well and brought him to life.
Thank you.
And then here we have the introduction of the aspect of him being in love with Amy Rose, which is defining part of his character and something that was so much fun to write, but especially hear you get all these loins get all these lines just right. Excuse me.
I don't think he has loins, but
no, he doesn't.
Who knows? No, these lines were a lot of fun to do. I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but I enjoyed all the romantic banter that Zalvindor tried to throw at Amy. I loved all the hearts and everything. And they don't quite understand what he's saying. He has such an old dialect.
Yeah, very old English. Not like super old English, but
And the
it's
glass breaking in
definitely-
the background, I love that.
Oh yeah, I was really happy with how that came out. Yeah, this is actually before I took a full year of Shakespeare in high school. When Salvador returns in 2023, that is after, I believe, or during my time taking the class. So I think I had gotten like a little more experience on how people talked sort of back then. I mean, of course, that was the Renaissance. If anything, I would say his dialect is very like based in the Renaissance era of like, you know, of Europe.
And it has that kind of embellished Shakespearean sound to it. I wondered at the time if you were if you had taken some kind of Shakespearean class, if you were in any plays or anything.
I think the closest I had to that at the time of this episode, at least, was in my freshman year going over Romeo and Juliet.
Oh,
but
cool.
You know, when it got to 23, I was much more like, okay, now I can really get down with how he talks. And it was so fun bringing him back. And you know, we won't talk about it because we won't be doing a commentary on it. But in the last episode, he comes back. He makes his final appearance in the series, and it was a lot of fun to bring him back because from the moment I introduced him, I really liked him as a character.
I did too, and it was really fun to return as him, and I think everybody else enjoyed him too. And I just remembered this now. I was in some plays too, and I think it was right around this time period. I don't remember the exact years, but Salvador is kind of a combination of these two characters that I did. His voice, anyway, is kind of a combination of these two characters that I did in plays around this time period. I was in Sleepy Hollow. I played the villain Brom Bones, and he had this kind of bombastic, you know, villain kind of bully voice. You know, thought he was all that. He was kind of a Gaston type of character, and but I mean, he didn't have as much of an accent. And then I played the title character of Charlie's aunt. I played Charlie in that. He had an English accent. He was a much more friendly character, though. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting to me. I never noticed it before, but it's almost like a combination of those two characters at the time. I mean, I do a ton of different voices, but yeah, those are the two characters that kind of come to mind.
That's interesting to say, because you have really great range, and that's why I was so happy to have you as not only Salvador but also Vector. And unless you like listen to them back to back, you can't. You know, it's not like it's like that's the same guy. You know, they're varied enough, especially Salvador. It seemed like a trend with so you and Evan Mardick, who went on to voice Bedlam in my show. Both of you guys have extremely awesome range, but also both of you have on-stage experience, which is kind of an interesting correlation to draw between the two.
Oh, I didn't know that he had on-stage experience. Yeah, I remember hearing in the outtakes video his natural speaking voice sounded completely different than Bedlam.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I'd be interested to hear what else he can do.
And we should probably, or at least I should probably make note of the fact that, of course, this is the figure Salvador is represented by is just the Excalibur Sonic released by Jazzwares, the 5-inch figure. But
you can
at
see
this time, yeah, you can see the face. Yeah, I was limited with what I had. I wanted to write an original character, but I also had to be able to represent that character on screen somehow. And I thought Salvador, I'm just so used to calling him Salvador now. I thought the Excalibur Sonic figure worked fine. And I made note of how you could see the face. I actually changed that when he comes back in 23. I put little yellow dividers and like black paper behind his visor so you can't like see the Sonic face behind it.
I remember seeing that now. Yeah, there was more of an effort to cover that up. Would you do anything different with him now if you were to redo that episode and would you do like a custom figure or anything the way that you did with Bedlam?
That's a good question. Like, I'm honestly...
And that Excalibur Sonic's worth a lot of money now, so I wouldn't dare touch that with a customizing tool or anything. But, in the time period, in the year that this was made.
Yeah, like, that's a good question because in that sense though, I kind of also I needed like a knightly looking figure, and to commission and have a figure made to look like that with like armor and everything. I think it'd be pretty expensive, or at least difficult, or both, to go about doing. So maybe I wouldn't keep it different. I think Eggman also alludes to the fact that like it kind of looks like it's easy to draw the connection between like him making Metal Sonics and then now him making this new robot that kind of looks like Sonic, but it's never really addressed by anyone. So I don't know. I had plans to actually, and we'll talk about this in 23 again when Salvador comes back, but I had plans to use a different figure for the second robot in that episode, but again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. It's hard to talk about because like when I look at Salvador, I kind of look at everything I've ever done with him.
Yeah, I kind of tend to associate different Sonic figures with stuff like that too. Like anytime I see the Excalibur Sonic figure now, I always think of him as a robot. I hear the clunky sounds and everything. That added a lot to him, I think. Just the sounds every time he moved. I really liked that detail. What were those sound effects from?
Oh, it was a lot of Gundam sound effects. I think I used some Transformers sound effects, like G1 Transformers. Trying to remember. That was the majority of it, though. It was a lot of Gundam. I think I needed that to... Well, first of all, like, Salvador is... The figure of Excalibur Sonic is very hard to work with in stop motion. I tried using that to my advantage a little bit because, he could move a little stiffer as, in universe. Like, he would look a little stiffer because he's this giant, kind of clunky robot. But in, the real world, he's hard to just move in any frames. So, like, there's less frames of him moving all the time. Even in the last episode, like, it's still difficult.
Yeah, I have that figure too. The joints are just really loose and floppy, and they kind of refuse to work. It's a cool looking figure, but it's really hard to display even.
That's a good just description of most of Jazzwares is of their license of handling Sonic.
Yeah, they were a great company, but they were not without their flaws. And those
absolutely,
those Black Knight figures they felt really experimental. But I mean, I could talk about their figures for hours. I could talk about Sonic figures for hours. There's just so much nitty gritty detail about these things, and I don't know what it is, but they're just fascinating to me.
I mean, going off of that, there was of course the Lancelot, which was released correctly and then incorrectly, like re-released. Yeah, with the purple paint.
And what was that all about?
That's a great question. I don't think we'll ever have the answer to. And then we also got like the Sir Galahad. I believe that was Silver's name.
Oh yeah, I never did see this silver one in the store.
But it was like barely released. Exactly. Yeah. So
I never found the silver Superposer either.
Oh yeah, that was like few and far. Like at the end of their lifespan of having the license, their stuff was like really impossible to find.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because pretty much everything they produced was like, of course they had flaws, but like, I mean, they single-handedly kind of created the look of my show in terms of the characters. So if it wasn't for them, like the show would look drastically different now.
Going back to that, anytime I see the 3-inch Sonic figure now, I kind of hear your voice in a similar way. Like, whenever I look at the Resource Sonic figure, I can't help but hear Matt Piper's, "Hey, what's going on?" The scratchy voice.
Oh, absolutely.
And Tails like, "What's going on, Sonic?"
Yeah, I totally know what you mean.
So I tend to associate different figures kind of with... They're almost like different characters. I know they're both supposed to represent Sonic, but they're such different takes on the character that they're almost their own thing. And the different looks kind of helps that, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because just compare this one to the Resource figure, and it's a completely different... I mean, granted, like, Sonic's in-game design looked different between those two eras, but the figures really kind of show that off in every regard because it's a three-dimensional model you can hold in your hand and kind of see everything about. So comparing the Jazzwares figure to that is like night and day.
And the different, I guess, Sonic stop-motion YouTubers that have been around through the different years have all kind of had their signature Sonic figure or series that they would regularly use. I don't know if I ever had like a regular one that I used. It would just kind of change. Like for a while I used the Superposer. Then I got the Resource figures, and everybody thought those were the best at the time, and they're still great and everything. But then I started using the 3-inch ones, and you, I think, pretty consistently used the 3-inch figures, at least for the later part of the show.
Yeah, it was between episodes 8 and 9. I did the Christmas special, where, with one exception in that special, I was only using the Jazzwares figures. And that's when it started, 9 and all the episodes after, I was only using these. It also, I kind of mentioned this in one of the other commentaries, but it's also like I started building sets around these figures, so like if they just randomly changed size, it would kind of, or look, or like anything, it would look very, there would be no consistency there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with stop motion. The scale is... It has to be consistent with the figures and the sets and everything. If you got figures or characters that you make that are different sizes, it just complicates things. I tend to try to, like when I make clay stuff, I tend to kind of make the characters smaller so that the sets can be smaller and I don't have to have as much room to store everything. And the 3-inch Sonic figures worked really well for that. I could have really small sets, but they could still be detailed and everything. I think they were a good size.
Yeah, it was like the perfect happy medium size when it comes to that, definitely. Like, you saying that makes me think of, like, what if the normal Jazzwares line, the one that we got all these characters with, was like 5 inches? Like, the sets would have to be so much larger in that regard. And, like, the standard sizes of cardboard boxes, like, just naturally worked very well with the figures of these sizes. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, these figures just tended to work the best with everything, I think, scale-wise.
Absolutely.
Chaos Emerald to keep in use when we needed to. Lucky for us, his timing was great.
I see. So I'm essentially gonna fight fire with fire then.
Pretty much. If you manage to hold on to the sword for most of the fight, the combination of that and the emerald will make a huge difference on your part. The odds are still against you to some extent, but that hasn't stopped you before, has it? If we put our heads together and think of a good plan, we just might be able to pull this off.
Oh yeah, and here we have the wedding.
Yeah, so you got Jerry, you've got Vegeta.
Everyone came by, man. Everyone wanted to see this.
Wonder if, because Eggman says friends and family here, do you think Mama Robotnik is in there somewhere?
You know what, I like to think that she is. Probably like up in the wings or something.
Like his brother and his cousin or something.
Well, I think he actually says friends, family, random people off the street. So like there were just people that showed up, like oh, free food. I think, I don't know. Does the robot eat? Whatever.
All right.
And of course, Tails even showed up. Of course, we have a plan. Forgot about that.
And the blue tack and everything.
Oh, I know. There are so many people that ask me like, what is underneath their feet?
There's white
don't know
tack.
what it is. Yeah, there is. I probably should have gotten that, but oops, too late now.
It's kind of a signature of the show at this point.
That is true. Like, yeah, if there was a character standing and you didn't see that, it'd be like, what's going on?
Yeah, really.
This was such a fun scene in all aspects, to write, to record the lines on both my end as Robotnik and on your end as Zalvandor, and to shoot. It was very fun. And and to make the set, it was also like where Amy was standing before, there was like doors, and there's 2 murals behind them right there.
Yeah, I like the mosaic of Zalvandor and everything.
Yeah, I think it works really well. Like as if I'm like unbiased, like, yeah, I think this works really well. I've never seen or made this before. It's just like I'm a third party. I'm just watching this for the first time. I think it works well. But like, okay, so back to Zalvandor, big star of this scene in particular. Is there anything else like you specifically remember about recording back then?
Well, as I was rewatching this earlier today, I had sort of a Mandela effect. I was thinking that Zalvandor says, "Yes, of course she says I do," that kind of thing, like where Eggman's, and he says it for her, but he doesn't. He lets her say it, and so I misremembered that.
Oh, interesting.
I could have sworn that I said that line, so it's just a weird memory flaw, I guess.
I mean, now that you bring that up, I think I remember when we recorded you, suggesting something like that.
Maybe
so. It makes sense why you would remember it. Like, what if he did that, or so on. And maybe we even did record a line like that, and I just didn't end up using it.
Maybe so.
Because a lot of the time, when we do the direct, the voice direction, when I'm in the call with you, and this goes for everyone else too, sometimes I'll just realize, oh, this doesn't sound good as a line, this, etc.
Yeah, and we would kind of riff sometimes, or I'd say, this doesn't sound natural, maybe take this word out and put this word in, or make it less wordy here, clean this up, stretch this out, whatever.
Absolutely. When, writing something is one thing, but when you hear the person actually say it, you're like, that doesn't sound good at all, so I need to kind of tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time.
This is one of the only moments that Sonic, Shadow, and Silver all work together in my show. It's rare. You kind of get it at the very end of the show, but between, there's not so much.
I don't remember that happening too much. I don't remember seeing Silver do a lot of action scenes throughout the show.
Yeah, that would be correct. He doesn't do a whole lot.
You've already tried stealing my girlfriend. Don't go taking my lines, too.
You filthy swine!
Awesome. Spear!
All the obligatory chaos moves.
Yeah, that was a staple of Shadow. Even in Silver's psychokinesis effect, you can really see improvement where if you compared it to now, because it just has this hard edge of where the effect stops instead of I don't know. I used a softer brush when I did his effect in the later episodes. So
I forgot how much the animation even had just improved since this episode. I mean, it still looks good, but looking back at it after I had just watched the later episodes, there's a lot more of a grit to it, and changing in lighting and some camera jitter and stuff. But it's still very smooth.
Yeah, this is I wasn't even color correcting regularly at this point, which is crazy to think about. I did it in this scene when it goes into chaos, infinite chaos control or whatever with Sonic and Zalvandor, and the lighting noticeably gets purple and stuff.
Yeah.
But all these frames are not color corrected, and I could see it. That's what really bothers me. I could tell.
I always hate when that happens. The characters are all blinking at this point, though. I remember when you kind of started doing that.
Yeah, that started in episode 16.
Oh, you know what would have been cool if the little slits in the visor of Zalvandor would light up, as he would talk.
Oh, yeah, I did a similar effect to that in episode 15 when Sonic got transformed into the robot, and the eyes and mouth of the egg pawn would light up as he talked.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
I guess I didn't think of doing it with Zalvandor. It would have been pretty cool, though. Man, you really make me want to go back and just make director's cut episode 19.
The George Lucas special edition version of Sonic Stop Motion Adventures.
This was a pretty cool concept, though. I like what I did here. And the lighting changed enough where you could kind of tell something had happened.
Yeah, I really liked this part. And just all the characters being still, even though they're figures, it was weirdly... It was kind of creepy, even watching it again now.
Yeah, because obviously they're figures and that's what they do, but everyone, or Sonic and Zalvandor are moving, but no one else is.
Seeing Eggman kind of hunched over. I don't know, there's something about it.
Yeah. I'll probably go into this when I do my own commentary, but Zalvandor was not going to be because he was kind of played for laughs a little bit. He was still seen as a genuine threat. But the whole concept of him falling in love with Amy was like something I added way later.
But that's what I liked about him, though. I mean, he was threatening and he was genuinely powerful and he could really kill Sonic, but he was kind of goofy. He was funny, but not in just a, I don't know, not in always a smart way, but in kind of a goofy way a lot of the time, and I really liked that.
Yeah.
That's what I think made him the most fun.
AzFastAzLightning. This is a technique I had stay with him. I think he used it in the first fight scene, and he used it just now, and then he used it also in 23 again.
Is that an OC attack, or is that a real attack from
Yeah, that's something I made up. Yeah. Loses his arm for the first time.
I feel kind of bad for him. I mean, because he doesn't know any better, this poor robot.
That's true. He was just programmed to kill Sonic and then ended up falling in love.
He just thinks that's how everything still works. He doesn't know everything going on. But it's kind of cool to see him come back later.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, though. I didn't even notice until now that is the arm that he lost this time. I mean, Sonic just cut it off. And then when he was put back together in 23, he had his arm. And then Zerato just ripped it off and then, like, permanently got rid of his arm. Which is why in 27 he has a black arm, like kind of like this haphazard, like, replacement arm.
Oh, I had forgotten about that. It's kind of like C-3PO's leg or something.
I think I just took the Lancelot arm and kind of stuck it there, but it looks out of place enough to, like, you could tell, like, oh, replacement arm.
Yeah, that was a smart idea. It was cool that figure can just kind of pop apart.
Yeah, thankfully. Yeah, without, like, permanently damaging it.
Did his joints get looser after you had to put him back together?
I don't recall them being very loose afterwards. They could have been, though. Like, I don't know. That figure is a mess to work with anyway, so... Honestly, I don't think I could have made it worse to work with.
I guess that's kind of what's fun about him, though.
I guess. I mean, the joints were like, they were kind of ratchet joints, so they kind of like had specific places where they would pop in, and like not enough like leeway in between to make frames of animation, so it was a challenge for sure.
Yeah, I think that kind of made him look more clunky too, though, and the way that the arms sort of jut out.
Definitely. Back to what we were saying at the very beginning. Well, as the credits roll here, you know, any final thoughts about the character? I mean, you can leave stuff to say for 23, obviously, but for voicing him for the first time here.
It was fun. I mean, listening to it again, I think that I could have done better, but I mean, it is what it is. I still think it held up fairly well, and I miss voicing him. He was a lot of fun. I'm gonna miss voicing all the characters that I voiced on this show. I'm really glad that I got to be a part of it, and it was a really cool first introduction. And yeah, Steven was a lot of fun to work with. It was a really cool show, and yeah, it's quite a monumental Sonic stop motion series to have lasted this long and for this many years, and you know, for you to work this consistently on it and actually finish it, and not just, you know, have it trail off or get canceled or anything. So that's admirable.
Thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you for joining me on this episode, and you'll be coming right back in the next couple ones.
I'll see you all later.